Hello, welcome to the Charity Cup 2 Day 2. I am Chad Flame here with Mystical Might and Deebs. How are you two doing today?
Yeah, not too bad.
Doing well. Glad to be here.
Well, we had an interesting day one yesterday with a lot of fun and exciting matches, and hopefully we can get some of that today. There'll be a lot of matches where teams will be eliminated and or moving on today. Our first matchup today, though, will be between Neglect Emotionally and Standard Protocol. And am I looking at the wrong thing? Oh, day two. I'm looking at the wrong day, of course, because I'm an idiot. We're looking at Baby Carrot versus Rookie Crookie for match one. Do any of you guys know these teams at all? And if so, would you care to explain who they are?
So
Yeah.
you go for it.
No, I was going to say I don't know them, so go ahead.
Okay, I was gonna say I think Baby Carrot, if I'm remembering correctly, is the Brave team, and it's named Baby Carrot. I believe Dujek was explaining because of some internal memes that they have. So they have a whole naming convention behind it now. Rookie Crookie, I'm not too sure about personally, so I can't speak to them too much. But yesterday I did say that I think they'll win based on their names, so I'm gonna back that today.
Awesome. Well, we have that match starting very shortly. So let's talk about some of the bans for that match and maybe some predictions of what we're going to see based on what we saw yesterday. Before we talk about bans, was there anything, Misty, that you saw yesterday that you thought looked pretty good, maybe wasn't working, and what we might see today?
Honestly, I'm hoping that we see more Tholuses used in the tournament, but used properly. I know that they have a very small range, but a lot of the teams that we're seeing so far are all largely brawling. Um, Even though they have the projection, there is limited range control, so they often get on top of each other. But the Tholuses that we saw yesterday would only shoot their breacher pod at one target. And I think they should be spreading the love a little bit around the rest of the enemy team. So hopefully we see some better piloting from Tholos pilots today.
That would be awesome to see. Deebs, was there anything that you saw yesterday that may or may not have worked, and some things you might expect to see today, or hope that are done better?
Uh, I saw a lot of teams seem to miss the ability of Hicks to really control the arena. They would kind of use them on one target and not uh, aggressively use that hit point, that scram to prevent teams from doing things. They'd also just you'd see a lot of Hicks just hugging each other and not doing anything more with their point, even if the enemy had them pointed. So I'd like to see more use of Hicks.
All right. That is always a good thing to see. Utilizing that hick point, you could always tackle more than one target down, and the more you hold down, the more you're freed up to have the rest of your team be able to move around those players and tackle other things. So that is something I'd like to see more of as well. Bans are in for this upcoming match, and Baby Carrot has banned the Sentinel, Crucifier, and Arbitrator, and Rookie Crookie has banned the Carius, Sentinel, and Armageddon. Deebs, what do you think of these bans?
I mean, nobody likes getting E word out, right? So this is very heavily. We don't want to see our range get dropped to zero. Kind of from both sides. We don't want to see the newts. We don't want to see the dams. It's just we really, really don't like fighting that E war fight.
And Deebs, with these bans, what would you expect to possibly see coming through those bans?
Again, unfortunately, they're just kind of generic. You might be expecting something turret based because turrets do suffer a little bit more than missiles in terms of those bands. Maybe you're seeing something projection focused instead of a rush, but really, those could be anything, in my opinion.
Gotcha. And Misty, is there anything that you think based on these teams that we might see and what kind of matchups we're expecting?
Honestly, looking at it, yeah, I think I agree with the idea that we Baby Carrot doesn't want to be seeing anything that's going to limit their ability to shoot long distances. They may try and kite a little bit and use their projected damage to tank. But I think the carries ban is interesting in the sense that it opens up the room for the Kitsune. We've seen the Kitsune kind of suffer in the carries versus Kitsune matchup because when you jam something, it can still lock you back, and the carries can just stamp you down until you can't lock it. So it really limits your ability to jam things. So with the Kitsune still open, I expect we might see that on the grid from Rookie Crookie.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I was almost going to point out that I thought that there might be a chance we see like a Celestis or a Mollis with these bans. When you see that much E-War, someone might try to slip something and be like, these ships are still available. They might not be as good or as oppressive, but maybe we see one of those come in. Also, the Geddon ban. Misty, do you think that the Geddon ban's worth anything here with these bans?
Well, the Geddon ban is interesting. In a 6v6 matchup, especially one where we've seen the logistic ship die quite early on in matches fairly frequently, we need to put more value, I think, on the local rep that these battleships will have. And the Armageddon is going to be one of those ships that can really stress the ability for a battleship to continuously run its armor tank, for example. I think it probably impacts armor ships more than it does shield ships, in the sense that your rep still takes capacitor when you're using a large ancillary armor rep, whereas your ancillary shield booster will run off of cap boosters until it runs out. So I expect we might also see an armor setup coming out from Rookie Crookie based on this ban, along with the Kitsune. It's harder to read the Brave team because, as Deep said, that their bans are more generic.
Yeah, those bans are a little more generic. I do think that the Dami is a good substitute for the Geddon because you could still fit a full Newt Dami in there, so that's a possibility to avoid those bans. I think that's what we're going to see is someone attempt to push through the bans and bring Ewar or a Newt battleship still. But like you said, I like that Kitsune talk. Can you Deeps tell me why the Kitsune might be a extremely good replacement in this matchup with the carries being gone?
Sure. So with the carries being gone, though the malls and Celeste is still open, as you noted, but that means that the Kitsune can potentially, at least, be able to jam without being just shut down in turn, as Mystical said earlier. Um, and with only 6 things to jam, and you can make some guesses on what's being brought, that Kitsune can jam a good portion, at least, of the enemy fleet all at once, all by itself, which makes it pretty scary and very annoying to deal with.
Yeah, especially being a frigate, harder to hit. You know, the Sentinel Crucifer Arbitrator ban, really targeting projection. It might be able to sit out far away and get under guns or get under missiles, or a team might have practice, transmatching or have missiles that can just volley through it. So we will see if that is brought or not. I'd be excited to see if it is, though. With a few more minutes up until our match starting, is there any predictions on what team you think is going to win? Let's start with you, Misty.
I'm gonna have to go for Rookie Crookie. I like the potential behind their bands, and also, Dujak also taking part in the production of this tournament, so I'm gonna have to prey on his downfall a little bit, just to keep it spicy.
And what about you, Deebs? Is there any...
See, Dujak's been a very good practice partner to me in the past, so I'm going to have to support my one of my favorite AT practice partners here.
Yeah, I'm also going to have to go with Baby Carrot as I have scrimmed them as well, and I do think that the amount of time that Brave as a team has spent in the tournament scene really does come through when you have that many years of practice and working with your guys and just drilling, doing this stuff over and over. So I'm going to also hand it to Baby Carrot here in my prediction. With that said, though, we have a few more minutes up until this match is ready to begin, and what are we excited for anything to see anything special today, you two? Or was there anything from yesterday that you quickly want to highlight? Start with you, Misty.
Um, I think one of the things I want to highlight is the difficulty that some of the close range battleships have had in the tournament so far. We've seen a lot of Torpedo Raven, and we saw some Blaster Hyperions. Um, we saw that they were running into the issue that they couldn't really get on top of the targets that they wanted to be shooting at, and that led to them being unable to apply that damage, and then eventually their team fell apart. Whereas we've seen some fairly interesting setups where the Hyperion's been fit with the rails, for example, which has allowed it to shoot out to range and not be shut down by a single tackle frigate. So I think I'm expecting to see more and more projection setups, even if the team is looking to brawl. They might still be using a longer range weapon system so that they still have the option to shoot further if required. The other thing being, there was the interesting Scorpion and Kitsune setup as well, which I think was a really cool technical setup to execute in the tournament, requiring a lot of coordination between the Scorpion and the Kitsune pilots so that they weren't both jamming the same ships all of the time. And we saw that work to great effect against the Ashimu, which managed to tackle down the Kitsune at one point, but was then later jammed off by the Scorpion.
I 100% agree. It did seem like Brawl Camps had a little bit of a struggle yesterday against those projection counterparts, because you could still kind of brawl with projection and do roughly a little bit less DPS than a brawl, but you could shoot out way further and maybe have a little bit more range options. And Deebs, quickly, is there anything that you saw yesterday that you'd like to highlight or things you'd look forward to seeing today?
I am interested in seeing a brawl comp really manage that range. Like, I think the option is there. I think the possibility exists if you fly the right support and you fly the right things in the right way to just throw a bunch of damage at things with T1 cruiser logi. There isn't that much rep power to go around, so I think it is possible to fly a brawl comp well and end up punching through the enemy.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if Brawl Camps start to win. I don't know about that, but from what I'm looking at right now, it doesn't seem like we're going to see a Brawl Camps as teams have started to land on grid in the arena. So with that being said, we're going to go over to the arena to watch Baby Carrot versus Rookie Crookie right now.
G'day there, mates. Welcome to the arena, and we have a classic shield versus armor setup going here. Roke versus Abaddon. What do you think about this one, mate?
I definitely think it's going to be an interesting matchup, to say so none the least, in terms of the fact that both of these are rather brawl-looking like comps, so we're going to see what they're able to pump out.
Yeah, we see the old bait Prophecy Navy here again, and another Vigilant. The Vigilant's going to be the squishiest ship on this field. He's going to be very careful with what he's doing. He's probably going to be the first target most of the time.
Very highly probable. The Tackle Vengeance could definitely play big for the blue team here, and potentially locking around the red team and splitting them up, preventing them from getting their DPS to where they want it just quite.
The interesting thing about that as well is usually you tackle things with a scram here, but like, nope, they got a Phantasm. They don't even care. Also, the Hyena of Liana is going to be very threatening for this Vigilant and potentially other ships as well. So, I'm curious to see what happens here as match is about to go underway.
Yep.
Let the games begin. Looks like Blue is absolutely charging in with their armor ships.
Hitting that exit core like crazy.
Oh no! I'm assuming that's a Rail Rogue again, right? Yeah, that is a Rail Rogue. All right.
Exit core seeming to get some transversal here, potential that he can survive, especially as the rep drone cloud gets to him. But is it enough?
There's nowhere for him to run. That rogue can shoot most of the arena. There's no disruption.
And there
here.
he
He's
falls.
gone. Now, fortunately for the Rogue, though, he is hard tackled with the enemy ships around him. So there's a good chance they can get under his guns pretty well, unless I see a grapple, which I think they've got one. No, they've got a couple grapple. Look at a grapple, okay. And look at the Magus now.
Oh, Magus is
absolutely
chunking.
pounded.
Link's falling is definitely inconvenient for the team. Puts them on a timer
yeah.
before their tank goes way worse.
Now we get the tracking
Rock
bonus on the
getting
Ferric Navy.
chunked.
Makes it a very good small ship killer. And Vigilant, Vigilant's a good call here as well. This is the really squishiest ship around. Going to get rid of that. And at that point, the Rook has a chance of tanking this. But at the moment, he's just holding. Potentially with an XLASB giving him some free boost.
XLSB could definitely be big here. If it runs out of charges, it could definitely change the tide. Because that Rook is definitely a heavy DPS for the red team here.
Oh yeah. I'm just I'm hoping the Roke kills it, because I'm not going to lie, I'm always a fan of a Roke. You don't see many of them. They're beautiful machines. Vigilant's always tanking very well as well. A lot of rep drones on him.
He also is orbiting the rock at 500 by the looks of it, which is definitely making it very hard for those large railguns to apply well.
He's trying. He's orbiting at a grand total of like 40 to 50 ms, but you know, any transversal is transversal. And now he's just kind of stopped and just control spaced. Meanwhile, the Rogue has it not control spaced. He's still wiggling around.
There goes the Vigilant.
But there we go. Gone.
It is looking harder and harder for red team for blue team, I mean, to clutch the victory here by the looks of it.
And both teams actually, I just realized that both teams have been using Logi drones this entire fight. This is what the world we live in with tournaments. We have Logi drones that are very, very useful. They're not useful anywhere else. Ferox Navy now being primary, he's now chasing after someone. He was going after the Vengeance. I think he might stop doing that now. We'll see.
Vengeance looks to be taking heavy damage, although the splitting of damage between Prof Navy and Vengeance here seems like something to do with the fact that the Rock can't hit the Vengeance, so it's prioritizing Prof Navy instead, perchance here.
Yep. It looks like the Vengeance tried to go tackle the Osprey, and the Ferox Navy decided he's having none of that and is going to remove it.
Indeed. It is unfortunately hard for the Vengeance to do much because the Osprey can still rep the Rock in the situation, so it's not preventing the reps from landing.
Nope, but that Ferox Navy, though, is actually getting chunked pretty aggressively. I think the Abaddon's now hitting really well as the Ferox Navy's burning away. They might, if they get lucky, they might be able to just like rip through the Ferox Navy before the Osprey can save it. Come on, fingers crossed. Let's make it a bit more interesting. He's going through armor. I think the Prof Navy's going to die too quick, though. I think he's going to die too fast, and this Ferox Navy's going to survive. Yep.
Feels so too. There goes the Prof Navy. It is just a question of how long the Abaddon can survive and if he can stay under the guns of the Rock. Although by the looks of it, the Rock is free from the tackle. So as long as he's applying, it should be a pretty solid win for Red here.
Oh yeah, even if the Abaddon got point blank to the Rogue, it's not going to matter. The Rogue will be able to engage him. That Ferox Navy is still going down. An Abaddon alone is about to kill it.
Abaddon can punch DPS into many ships.
Oh yeah.
Especially judging the fact that it's running Pulse. Its application is also semi-decent, so it can definitely do some mean things on grid here. It also, by the looks of it, probably has way better tank than the Rock, just due to the fact that he's running a less fitting hungry weapon system.
Yep. And the old bugbear of Kaldare's shield, EM Therm being a very good damage type to shoot. So yeah, they get rid of the Ferox Navy. It's not going to be a clean sweep for Baby Carrot. So well done, Rookie Crew, getting at least some blood
Osprey
back.
as well. Osprey's getting hit here. The Osprey doesn't pay attention.
I admit that large lasers are my weak spot. I can't tell if that's beams or pulses. Not that it particularly matters. He is definitely giving the Osprey a black eye.
Definitely. If the Osprey falls here, this actually could go the other way. It is just a question of if the Abaddon can exploit the higher DPS that it has over the Rock efficiently and the better tank.
I love your optimism, my man, but I don't know if I can see that one happening.
Half Armor's definitely a tricky position to start from.
Also, a good mix of damage here for this team as well. Against a reactive, they've got EM Therm from the Laces, they've got Kin Therm from the Hybrids, and they've got whatever damage they want from the Jackdaw.
Definitely. Also, Phantasm being a AB bonus ship, it can act as anti-tackle because it's harder to lock down and it doesn't care about the scram that much. So it's able to keep moving and to shoot the targets that need to be shot for the team if the Rock gets tackled or the Ferox Navy, which are both relatively slower ships.
Yes. Well, Abaddon's about to go into hull, so well done, Ayumi. You managed to push back pretty well, but unfortunately, there's only so much one battleship can do, and this was not a situation where a battleship can solo the enemy team.
Definitely. By the looks of it, Ansel has run out of charges as well, which is why the tank has decreased significantly. Although, wow, the Rock is getting punched into deeper shield now.
Yeah, I'm hoping he tried to sneak in an XLSB reload, or maybe he's running just a Tech 2 booster. Personally, I run XLSB, but that's just me. It's interesting, though. But well done.
Abaddon falls and Red Team takes the victory. Clean plays.
Grabs a Baby Carrot, and we'll move on back to the studio.
Wi-Fi. Scram and hope I don't get scrammed.
Holy goddamn stuff!
Drifter has me scrammed here. We need to clear.
Play it out, God.
Yeah, I'm logging off. This is fun,
Dopamine.
Welcome back to this from that exciting match. There's a few things we got to talk about here. When a match starts, you make some decisions, and I think that match was really decided by some decisions made off the gate. Misty, you said you saw some interesting decisions in drone choices by each team. Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, I believe it was called out during the match, but there was, I think, a strong use of rep bots. In general, I did see that there was a set of damage drones out on the Hyena at one point, but rep bots in the tournament, especially I think in a 6v6, but also in the Alliance tournament and the 10v10 situation, rep bots can have a considerable impact in how long your ships stay alive. Each rep bot, I think, depending on the size, will do like 30 HP or something like that. Times that by 5, that's actually a fair amount, especially because it's not impacted by resistances or anything. So you will be able to keep some ships alive under small amounts of pressure. And when one ship is being shot a lot, it will still help extend their lifetime, right? So it gives you those crucial moments to exploit any openings that your opponent may leave open, so that you can actually change the game in your favor. And not using rep bots, I think, can be a big mistake if you're not a drone damage based team.
Definitely a good decision. It looked like there to go with rep bots. Another early decision that I think kind of tipped that match had to do with target calling and maybe some trading that was done that favored the Baby Carrot team. Deebs, would you like to talk about how that might have turned the match in their favor at the start?
Yeah, so we saw very early that the team with the Abaddon was not shooting that Osprey, and which meant that the blue team managed to keep their reps going for a very long time, keep their Roke alive, uh, managed to just keep doing damage. And the longer you're alive, the more damage you do. It's a very simple equation there. And then later we saw that with almost no support left, with the Abaddon basically doing it by itself, it was able to kill that Osprey. So potentially they had the option to kill that Osprey much earlier and maybe turn the tide of the match.
Yeah, it was a little interesting. I saw some they went for the Hyena first, and a ship that might be a little harder to track with some of those larger weapon systems. When the Osprey is kind of, pretty easy to shoot through. We actually saw it die pretty quickly just from the ABBA alone when it switched onto it. So maybe a target call in the beginning going for a Logi trade would have helped them get a little bit of a lead or at least stay even with that team. Mr. Lemite, another thing you mentioned, because of this Logi trade, can you talk about what the timer of when that Magus died? Like what happened there?
Yeah, so it was cool during the match. I believe Lemon said that the Magus went down, and now there was a timer on the Abaddon and the Prophecy Navy being able to pump out enough damage before they lost their links. The reason for that is that links, you need to refresh them every. I think with a mind link and max skills, it's 2 minutes. In this format, you don't have the mind link, so I think it's a little bit shorter. I think it's about like 1 minute 30, something like that. Um, Once those links go down, you lose the bonuses that they provide. I would assume that in the tournament setup here, they would have skirmish links and armor links, maybe an info link as well. Armor links would be giving you HP, they would be making your reps better, and they'd be giving you resistances. And skirmish links would be allowing you to move faster and tackle further and be harder to hit, right? So once those links go away, it's harder for you to stay alive. And yeah, that's where that idea of a timer comes in. It's about making use of the links that you have after your link ship goes down.
Exactly. It definitely did feel like the Baby Carrot team did put Rookie Crookie on a timer there. And at the start, they took an advantage and kind of ran with it. Even though Rookie Crookie did kind of claw back at the end, it just seemed like they made the move just a little too late. We have another match coming up very shortly that we're going to talk about, and that is the Keep Zionist movements versus the German Railgun team. And the bans are in with Zionists banning the Ashmu, Hyena, and the Gedin, and German Railgun team banning the Orthrus, Caris, and Hyena. Deeps, would you quickly like to tell us about what you think of these bans?
Sure. So from the one side, we see Orthrus carries Hyena. They do not want to get kited out, right? They don't want to get webbed on their way in. They don't want the Orthrus kiting around them, using that long scram range to slow them down. They don't like those rapid lights, possibly, or maybe hams. So that says to me they don't want to be kited. They're going to go in. They're going to get close, and they want to do something with that. Mystical. What about the other side?
I'm thinking, I mean, just looking at the bans overall, right? Like the Armageddon ban makes sense. I think an Orthrus ban, every other ban in this setup kind of makes sense in the sense that there's a lot of control and evil. But the Orthrus we've seen basically fall apart in most matches where it's been fielded. It's not extremely tanky. Logistics isn't reliable, so they often die very quickly early on in a match. So there's nothing keeping an Orthrus alive. And with more teams aiming towards projection setups, it's very easy to project out and hit the Orthrus regardless of where it is. If it's in range to do damage, then it's probably in range to get damaged. So I think it's kind of a wasted ban, to be honest, the Orthrus there. But all other bans make sense in this case.
Yeah, it definitely seems like both teams here avoiding getting range controlled and or kited. And with that said, I think we're expecting to see maybe some brawl matchups here, maybe a brawl versus a projection matchup. Misty, do you have any opposing views or other things you think you might see?
I mean, again, the Kitsune's open, the carries is banned out. We have the Armageddon banned out again, along with the Ishimu and the Hyena, which lends itself to me thinking that there might be an armor setup coming out from the Chief Keef team. Whereas with the Orthrus and carries ban, I think that is setting up for a Kitsune because the Orthrus is kind of effective at dealing damage to frigates. Carries is able to damp it out. I don't know whether they would also be bringing an armor ship though, so I guess we'll see.
All right, and they've landed on grid, and we are going to send it over to the arena.
Welcome back. We've got Chief Keef versus, oh god, Magneshinikashutz. Did I get that right? And we have the ever loved, ever hated Torpedo Raven on this field. What do you think of this one, Lemon?
I definitely think that it's going to be interesting because they are both running Brawl. So
One's
it's just a
even more
question of who
broad.
can Brawl.
They
Definitely, I
walked in
think
at
that
0.
the Brawl definitely lends itself to the Raven a little more than it does to the Abaddon. And the Abaddon is naturally a little bit of a slower ship, so it's a question of how well can the team keep the Abaddon safe.
Yeah, and this Raven is again basically unsupported in terms of paints and webs. They got a tackle Jaguar, sure. They got a Thoros who might help, and a long scram from a broadsword. But in terms of application, he's gonna have to do a lot of that on his own.
Definitely, for sure. Which is going to make it a little bit harder for him, although hopefully the Kitsune can do some heavy work in keeping the Osprey off.
All right, so we see the German railgun team. I'm just gonna stick with that, pulling away as, of course, the Raven Rush is rushing straight in. Thelos first primary again, as Thelos tend to be, as he is definitely well within range, and he should be gotten rid of real quick. Oh yeah.
Yep, already down.
Second.
Very thin ship as well. It is just a question of if he was able to apply his breacher pod, which is definitely the main goal with that.
We see so many of these Theloses like, hey, we've got this cool new ship, and they lose it within seconds rather than trying to like maintain it for a longer fight. Kitsune being the first primary for them, as the Cyclone fleet is also being hit for the opposing team, and they're gonna try and go through an Abaddon under reps. No,
Kitsune as well, looking to be tanking pretty heavily.
yes, Kitsune I think has got an absolute wave of drones on him. Yes, it does. Both friendly and enemy drones are on top of that Kitsune, trying to get rid of him. Meanwhile, they are trying to go through an Abaddon, and an Abaddon under reps with a reactive is not gonna die.
Yeah, and it might come for them at the cost of the sci-fi, which is already dipping into armor now.
Whenever I hear the term sci-fi, I'm always thinking the bloody cruiser. I keep forgetting that this one's also called the sci-fi. But yeah, he's about to go into hull. And yeah, that's started bad and getting worse.
Broadsword is also struggling to... Actually, no, I'm lying. Broadsword has managed to tackle the Abaddon, which is a question of how well they can exploit that, although I
Yeah,
feel
the
like the
Jaguar is on
Abaddon
top of
is...
the Kitsune, which is nice.
feel like the Raven being here at 0 on the Abaddon, I don't feel like is the optimal move here because of the fact that the Abaddon will apply very heavy damage at that point-blank range, whereas if the Raven could afford to be a little further and still apply very well.
Yeah, being right up close is probably not worth it. At the same time, being further away, he probably still would be within, close range ammo crystals. I don't know if it mattered
Definitely.
too much here. My answer would be don't go for the Abaddon, but they are starting to push him into half armor and going lower, but they've already lost almost half their team, and that Raven is now being primaried as well. But both teams leaving their Logis alone. Like that Osprey, it's on its own a mile away.
Doing a good job
Uh,
piloting, putting himself out of harm's way.
I say that, and the devoter is immediately looks like devoter's going straight for him. Just check that. Is that actually what he's doing? Yep, devoter's
Yes,
going straight for
indeed.
the Osprey. There we go.
And it
They
looks like
found
he's going to
opportunity.
manage to land a scram perchance here.
Yep.
There
They
it
found
goes.
opportunity. And now the Abaddon should be able to basically control space if he wants and start shooting him, or they can stay on the Raven. It's hard to tell which way he's going to go. Looks like he's going to stick
Oh,
on the Raven.
Kitsune fell. Wow, that's going to be big. That means that the Osprey is finally going to have opportunities to rep the Raven more consistently. So it's just a question of if they can get him down before all those reps land and put him back up to full shield.
Might be a little too late there.
There
Yeah.
it falls.
Oh no. Once
Abaddon's
again,
still
the Torpedo
alive.
Raven
And,
falls.
yep, and Abaddon's still alive, and without the heavy damage of the Raven, he's likely to spool up even more. Get the better resists and keep tanking.
Interesting thing is, this Abaddon team went for more into DPS drones than Logi drones here. They do have some Logi drones, a couple of lights, but the majority of their heavy drone sets are all infiltrators and Valks.
Definitely interesting choice.
Yeah, it's always good to see why teams pick different things. This team is has a lot of potential longevity, and they could have gone harder into that, but they went into DPS instead, and it seems to have worked.
Definitely. Drones also could be big because they are all restricted damage type ships, with Amar guns and Galente guns both not being able to choose damage types. Having those drones to mess up reactives or potentially despool reactives ahead of time could be a very big play there if the team's making the right calls.
Considering they're all, by looks of it, warriors and Valkyries, you are dead on correct there, I think. It's the ruin reactives. Not that they run into any here, but it's always a smart idea to bring them. As a broadsword
Wow,
is getting
Broadsword
absolutely
is
looted.
down. And
Yeah.
this Jag
Now,
has little that it can do here. Running
Where
for
is he?
safety. Moving up
Is he going for a
towards...
beacon? He's going for a beacon. Okay,
Yeah.
we're going to see a boundary attempt here. Is he going to try and go for the record? Come on, buddy. Oh, see how far this man can go. I'm sorry, I'm just
Slowing
watching
down
lasers
now.
fly past him. Yep, he's going to slow down, get to the beacon, activate it, then burn away. No? Okay, where's he going?
Oh, diagonal.
That's
Is this
not
even going
the
to be
right
a
way.
boundary?
Not a very good one.
Still
Oh, wow.
alive.
Nope, he's just going to jump around, I guess.
Not much that he can do here. Not much that he can change about this.
I thought he was going to go out the arena. Instead, he's bloody staying around.
His 3
For
rocket
shame.
launchers probably don't have the damage needed to make a serious change here, especially with the Abaddon still on grid. And
Of course, it
Logi
doesn't have enough
reps.
damage. There's an Augurer.
He can at best have a dream here.
Look, I've killed a lot of surprising things in a Jagger at one point, but I'm sorry, not killing anything under Augurer reps. That's some wishful thinking.
Pontifex links as well. Definitely a lot going on there.
So I'm just
The
enjoying my
Pontifex
Tucker
Pontifex coming in to get tackle, probably preventing him from jumping, and then that'll seal his fate here.
Well, luckily, I don't think he's actually close enough to the beacon. I think he burned a bit too far
Yep.
away. There
And
we
he's
go.
getting pummeled.
Goodbye.
ADC going up probably here. Yep.
Good rep.
Getting those last seconds of life.
Very good rep. I wonder what that thing's fitted with. That's pretty tasty. All right, there we go. We're free. We're done. Magna Schutz has won their match, and we'll send it back to the studio and see what they think.
Guys, stop being casual. They're really bad. We should not lose anybody to this. Warp off. Warp off. Take the fleet warp. Everybody warp off. This is really, really bad execution. I'm very disappointed.
Crash our enemies. Your dams are completely damped out.
Crash. I'm damped out. I'm damped out.
Get on that campus, boys.
Heat your reps.
Yeah.
Everything down.
I've not been able to look at some of the thing all game.
What an interesting match that was. A rush into a projection. Something we talked about on the Dusk earlier here, in talking about how projection might actually be outdoing the rush. Deebs, Let's talk about the Torp Rush here. What is your opinions about these Torps that were brought on that Raven and maybe the ship they decided to shoot with it?
Well, Torps have a lot of damage. That's their big win factor is they do a lot of damage, but the problem is they don't apply it well to anything particularly small, and they only do so much damage in the end. And so we saw two things from that team. First, they put their Raven at 0 on the enemy Abaddon, allowing the Abaddon to shoot back at it. When one of the big benefits of putting Torps on your Raven is you have a lot of range. Even with Rage Torps, if you've got a missile guidance computer on there, you can be hitting 50, 60 kilometers with them. There's no reason to be at 0 on that, especially when the E-War that the enemy team had were jams. If they were damps, you could make a big argument, oh, we've got to get in close so that our Raven doesn't get damped off the Abaddon, given that we chose to shoot it. But with jams, there's just no reason to be in that close. And then the second thing with that is they were shooting the tankiest target on grid. The Abaddon is many things, and one of those things is really, really hard to kill. It's got a lot of HP. It's got a resist bonus. It takes reps better than everything else. They decided to just shoot the hardest target on field.
Yeah, when you have Torps and all you can apply it to really is their battleship and maybe battle cruiser, they ran in, they caught that slow battleship, and they just started shooting Torps and hoping. It kind of seemed like they tunnel visioned on it, and that kind of cost them the match. Misty, how about we talk about a armor versus shield matchup and maybe why one team had a little bit of a benefit there versus the other?
Yeah, so one of the things I wanted to discuss around, armor versus shield in the tournament is the benefits of their logi respectively, right? We talk about logi quite a bit, but to go a little bit more in depth in it, the Osprey is a shield logistics ship. It gets a bonus to remote shield transfers, which means when it puts its modules on you, you get shield back. I think with the Tech 2 medium shield transfer, you get about 550 raw hit points. So that that's a fairly substantial amount, but it takes about 8 seconds to cycle without links. On the flip side, an armor cruiser like the Executor that we just saw would give you back about 360 hit points per cycle of its rep, but it cycles every 6 seconds, so slightly faster rep time on the armor logistics, slightly better shield amount from the Osprey here. But the really crucial elements to the differences between the two ships is that shield reps land at the beginning of the cycle. So it's very easy for you to switch your reps to targets as they need it. So it's easier to keep some of your lower end alive if they start getting shot. Whereas with armor ships, it's harder to keep the lower end alive. You have to be kind of predictive with where your reps go, and you need to communicate really, really well. The other thing is that you can rep out fairly far with an optimal of about 50 kilometers with medium armor reps. Whereas shield reps, you're sitting at about 20, 25 kilometers before you start losing the amount of shields that you're getting. So I think there's a little bit more flexibility when it comes to the armor setup to comfortably rep at range. Whereas with shield logi, you want to be a little bit closer to get the full effect. You can still do fairly well at range, but you're not going to be feeling that that full like 650 HP that you could be getting if you sit a little bit closer, which then puts you at increased risk.
Yeah. The rush did not rush hard enough, it seemed, and the projection prevailed, as I think we all have started to notice and expected. Our next match is between Submissive and Bushable and Evasive Maneuverings. And we are looking at a interesting repeat of a lot of these bans that we've seen so far today, with Submissive and Bushable banning the Carries, Orthrus, and the Scorpion, and Evasive Maneuvering banning the Arbitrator, Sentinel, and Crucifier. Misty, tell me, why is Scorpion banned here?
Well, I think we've seen a Scorpion once so far in the tournament, and it did win its match. It was fairly good. Interestingly, it was paired with a Kitsune before, so that allowed the Kitsune and the Scorpion to jam whatever was shooting the other target. So if, the Abaddon was shooting the Scorpion, the Kitsune could jam the Abaddon to keep the Scorpion alive. And likewise, if the Abaddon shot the Kitsune, the Scorpion could jam it to keep the Kitsune alive. I don't know how comfortable teams will generally be bringing Scorpion in this setup, because it's a very, very substantial part of your comp to be putting the battleship into an E-War slot instead of a damage slot, which I think teams are fairly comfortable with. So interesting to see the ban. I don't know if they've practiced against each other before and they know a little bit about the internal meta that they've kind of developed between each other. But yeah.
Yeah, I believe actually that team that did bring the Scorpion was evasive maneuvering yesterday, and they did pull out a tight win using it. Deebs, seeing these bans, is there anything that you think we're going to see between these two teams in this next matchup?
Yeah, once again, we've got that Arbitrator Sentinel Crucifier ban set. They don't want those TDs, potentially GDs, but probably TDs. So no tracking disruption. We want to be able to shoot our guns from as far away as we want. And then there's the carries ban on the other side, so they don't have to worry too much about damps, just demol us. Kitsune still open. So this seems to be, hi, we're going to be bringing something mid-range. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, I would like to see if they bring a Kitsune in on this with all the TDs being gone and some damps and, the ability to use that Scorpion Jam, maybe reading that and pushing towards doing jams still. But I mean, we did see a Kitsune kind of get solo PvP'd by a Jag last game, so who knows if it's good? We'll have to see if it's good and if they do bring it. But with that being said, teams are landing on grid and the fight will be kicking off shortly. So I will be handing it over to the arena to break down the start of this match.
On grid here, we have Submissive and Bushable and Evasive Maneuvering landing. Submissive and Bushable bringing the Raven Rush comp by the looks of it, and Evasive Maneuvering coming in a Rapid Heavy tight Typhoon comp. Wingnut, what do you think here?
I'm looking forward to this one. This Raven is going to have a real bad time. Both teams also brought Onyxes as well. Probably the best shield to Hicks here for the situation. But only one team brought a Hyena, and the other team brought a Ramjag and a Thalos, both of which are going to be very tasty to murder.
Definitely, it's a question of how well that Hyena can keep all the tackle from red team off of itself, because they've got a lot. Jag, Thalos as well can ram and tackle. Onyx as well, of course, being a Hick. So it's a question of can he screen for the team, basically.
You think this Thalos will last more than 10 seconds? Or is he going to do the same as every Thalos ever?
We will see. I think the biggest thing is whether he can inflict the Breacher Pod onto the Typhoon and the Sci-Fi as well.
Match underway, and they are immediately running away as the other team comes screaming in.
Wow, Jag running up front real fast.
Yep.
Does he get screened?
I believe, yep, Web has already applied
Getting
to him. I
webbed,
saw a web flash on the Fleet Cyclone, I believe, as well. So already this Hyena is having to juggle multiple targets, as the Jaguar appears to be the actual primary target.
Definitely a questionable call, considering that it can also fit an ADC, which can make it a very hard ship to kill. And he is still getting closer and closer to the team, so if he lands that vital
Thalos
scram...
is now in front. The Thalos is now in front of the grid. They might switch over, but it looks like they're going to stick on the Jag for now. Nope, they're switching to the Cyclone Fleet. Fair enough.
Scrammed and tackled down now. Hard for him to follow his gang in a jump if they plan to do something.
Yep, I think the Onyx is actually good work. They're keeping them screened off, but that they've got to screen multiple ships here, and they haven't killed one of them yet, and this is starting to get harder and harder. So
Osprey
far, though,
taking the fire here now from the red team. Lilith getting hit harder and harder.
Okay, so they're just going to kill off the Logi and then start murdering things? That sounds good to me.
Just a question of how much longer that the Typhoon has from his rapid heavies, because once he clips out, the damage on the Osprey is definitely going to get way more controllable.
Just keeping my eyes on a few bits and pieces here because I'm very curious. But they've actually I thought they were going to get caught for a second.
Typhoon looks to have clipped out. Typhoon's not shooting. I think he's reloading clip here now.
That's all good. They've got this under control now. They've got this perfectly under control. For a while there, they were looking pretty bad, almost against the edge of the arena. But now they're perfectly pulling away. They've got everything fully controlled with that Hyena and Onyx. Well, bloody done to Evasive. This is some amazing piloting compared to the average we see here.
Definitely Submissive and Bushable struggling to get close enough to actually make use of that Raven. Solo's surprisingly still alive. Definitely probably a new record by this point, eh?
Exactly that. Man's got the stopwatch going. Like, dude, I've lost like a minute and a half. That's right. It happens to 1 in 10.
Jag is getting pummeled in the
He's pulled
back
it
by the
away.
drones.
Yeah, he's absolutely pulling away, trying to break range. I think he already has. Now you can see, yep, he's now turning around as he's broken drone control. Now the next target's going to be the Cyclone Fleet.
And he's dipping low, so it clearly seems to be working pretty well. Without Logi, it's definitely hard for him to tank. He likely doesn't have much more than an Ansel tank on him, and once that's clipped, down he goes.
Yep. This evasive maneuvering, this is just some beautiful carding work here. Well done. And honestly, if you're submissive and booshable here, you gotta follow that last party name and try and boosh. Otherwise, you're just gonna die anyway. Try and jump on target. Try and get a lucky jump. Otherwise, you're just gonna be dead. But they're still just. Actually, look at the Raven. Look at the Raven. Hold on a minute. He's burning to the center beacon. We might see the Raven trying to sneak an MJD in here.
I think it's
Never
definitely the
mind, he
move for
started
them by
turning.
this point.
Never mind, he started turning. Oh man, I got excited for nothing.
It'd be hard for him to get on top. He's shooting missiles, but they don't seem to be reaching anybody because of the range.
Exactly. You think it's hard to get on top by doing MJD? It's not even harder by just burning at them. Cyclone Fleet. Oh, Jaguars got deleted.
Jaguar by the drones, most likely, and then Sci-Fi soon to follow him down to the grave. What much more hope does Red Team have left here? Evasive maneuvering
0.
doing a good job.
Yep.
Especially with the hyena there too.
The moment Evasive managed that kite at the start and controlled all the targets, it was game.
Definitely.
Unless Bush would change their strategy, there was nothing they could do. And at this point, they're still charging in. So, good night. It was a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, and the hyena doing an incredible job there, keeping all the targets off of him. One early scram and the match could have switched tides. So, hyena definitely was coming in clutch here.
Yeah, big respect to Beam, yeah, Beam Aderon and Skykiller Russian as well in the Onyx. But those two working together kept the entire team under control. So big respect to those guys.
Definitely. Ewar was also in their favor, the lack of damps or jams from the other team, with the other team ditching their Ewar Frig slot, what could be an Ewar Frig slot for the Jag to ram in. But that just got countered by the Hyena and the Onyx, and then he couldn't do much.
Yep, they had to control 3 to 4 ships running in, and they managed it. Big respect to them. Raven is still just pumping missiles as much as it can into the Typhoon. And,
hitting the Typhoon.
well, not really going to matter. Typhoon could just burn away and get some free reps from the Osprey and come back in if they cared to.
Definitely. He likely also isn't using a local tank if he might have any. So he's a long way from death. Onyx is just a very tanky ship here, but over time he's going to get beat down.
Yep. Osprey is one of the tank. They're definitely like the tankiest shield hick at the moment. I love it. Also, missile choice as well. Shoot whatever you want, fire the rainbow.
Yep.
Technically, they're kin locked, but not really, as far as I'm concerned. I'll fire everything.
By the looks of it, shooting explosive and EM into him. Definitely what you want to be doing.
Oh yeah, this team from Evasive is very experienced and very smart. I like.
Pulling it off very cleanly. And now it is just the Raven.
Once
going at
again,
a whole 37 meters a second. Not far he can move, and eating damage is his only choice here, I guess.
Once again, a torpedo Raven getting what it's deserved. Getting dunked. Hopefully we stop seeing these. Or at least stop seeing unsupported ones, because yeah, this is not going to work.
Definitely. Hard to ram your tackle in if you don't have some sort of Ewar to support it, and having the Jag here meant that they lost like a Carries or a Magus that could have potentially helped them get their tackle deeper in.
Oh yeah, there's definitely a bunch of different options, which I'm sure the desk will love to talk about. But at the moment, it's just going to be the slow death as the Raven is cycling at what I assume is an XLASB. Good bunch of mids for it, but not much more he's going to do here.
Indeed, he is just watching death rain upon him.
Yep. I'm just enjoying a nice coffee while watching, to be honest, at this point. Do I truly need to narrate? And now the Raven is going to explode pointlessly.
His atomic bonds falling apart, soon to be turned into nothing more than a wreck.
Perfect. And good fights on local. Good on him.
Definitely all about the fun and games out here.
Well, a
And there
very
the Raven falls. 100 0
very well done by
perfect
Evasive.
execution from Evasive, definitely.
All right, let's go back to Stu and see what they think about it.
We actually lost a bet as CCP collectively, so that's why that alliance logo is in the game. Of course, you could change your alliance by leaving, but that would be kind of a jerk move. Like, oh, you don't like it? Just leave.
This logo sucks. I'm gonna go join.
Pump up the dams, pump it up while your team is stumping. And the dams are pumping. Look ahead, the crowd is jumping. Pump it up a little more, get the party going on the dance floor.
Welcome back from that double shield matchup that we just had, with some extremely good piloting by evasive maneuverings there. Misty, can we talk about maybe some of the differences in the ships and how that match was played and how it maybe pulled evasive maneuvering to a win?
Yeah, I was just saying that finally we're seeing the Typhoon. I've praised it a little bit already in some of the prior kind of commentary and analyst slots. I think the Typhoon has been seriously underrated in the tournament so far. It is a very quick ship when fit correctly, and it can make great use of both rapid heavies or cruise missiles, depending on the type of setup that you're aiming for. Pair it with a Hyena, and as we saw, it can perform really, really well to outrun some of the brawlier, tankier comps that we've seen so far that typically move very slowly, while still projecting out fairly well. So I think that evasive maneuvering kind of lived up to their name, evading tackle, putting out damage, and sending submissive and bushable home, I believe.
Yeah, they definitely did outkite them. It's interesting because there's some, similar ships between the teams, some opposite ships. So let's talk about some of the similar ships. Deebs, let's talk about the Onyx from both of those teams. It is a tackle ship for one, and what was it doing here for the other team?
So we saw that used as a defensive ship, and used really, really well in combination with the Hyena, which meant between them they had enough modules that they could stop any ship from getting in close. And you saw them swap off and coordinate really well in terms of what was being webbed and what was being scrammed. Another thing that you saw was that the Onyx was sticking around right next to the Typhoon, still flying independently, but sticking close enough to the slowest ship in their comp to make sure that it didn't run ahead while they were trying to run away and leave the Typhoon behind to die. So both of those doing a really, really good job with keeping the right things tackled, keeping communication up with the Hyena to make sure that they weren't scramming something that was webbed or webbing something that was scrammed. Just an excellent job keeping everything away from their Typhoon.
Yeah, they definitely were just facing the kite comp with the rush comp, and evasive maneuvering does take that win. And submissive and bushable looking very submissive and not very bushable, as a bush might have actually helped them, tackle a ship and snowball that match. We have another match coming up actually right now that we need to talk about, and that is Satakara team versus OSHA Violators. And the bans are in, and of course, we are seeing another Carius ban, which has been banned in every match so far, paired with a broadsword and a Maulus, and OSHA banning the Geddon, Scorpion, and Prophecy Navy. Deebs, Prophecy Navy? What's your thoughts on this?
It's an interesting band because it is in some ways fairly replaceable, but on the other hand, it is very tanky. It is probably the tankiest ship in that slot, so we don't want to chew through a lot of HP maybe, but at the same time the Abaddon's open, which just strikes me as somewhat odd there.
And Misty, with the bans you're seeing, is there any predictions to what you might see come through these bans?
I mean, again, we see that the Kitsune is open, the Carries is banned out, the Morlus is banned out. It does look like the Sardaukar team is trying to remove any of the easy damps. The Celestis is still open, but it's really not something that you want to be bringing because there are so many other cruiser slots that can be really effective, like the Onyx, for example, like the Devota, like the Phantasm. That there's a lot of other better options out there. So Kissune's still open. I think that's interesting. Armageddon's banned. I think that's again just taking some of the nuke pressure away. I expect that we might just see two armor comps going into each other in this one.
Yeah, it's interesting because we keep seeing the same bans and some similar comps, and I don't know, teams still think that the rush works, and it clearly has been getting beaten up today. Who knows? We might see it work with some better piloting, but it doesn't seem like that is the case. Any predictions quickly before this match begins as teams are starting to land on grid?
Well, I'm gonna go with. I like the bands of the Sardaukar team more. I also think that the Sardaukar team is run by a Goon FC, from what I can see here. So it should be interesting to see what they bring to the field.
All right, and Deebs, do you have a like 2-word prediction on what team you think will win?
Not OSHA.
Not OSHA. That is a very good answer. And we will be sending it now to the arena to see if not OSHA can win this match or not. So, arena, take it away.
On grid, we have red team Sardaukar coming in with a Raven. As DJ Khaled would say, another one. One
But a
more onto the
different
grid.
one.
This one
This
has
is a
got the
different one.
cruises, which is definitely an interesting
Exactly.
choice here.
They've
Typhoon
entirely
also
flipped.
running cruises, so this definitely looks like kite versus kite. I feel like just looking at the stats bonuses themselves, I think the Typhoon is the better platform here for the kite. But we shall see how this plays out. What are your takes here, Wingnut?
Not just that, they've got a Celestis and Kitsune backing that Typhoon, so they've got a lot of control at range as well as being an absolute nuisance. So they can definitely harass their opponent while running away. Meanwhile, the other team does have more damage and Hyena for better application, but if it's damped or jammed for most of the match, what's it really going to do?
Definitely. Also the choice of Osprey Navy.
Yeah, that's a choice. Don't what you want me to say more than that. That's a choice.
It isn't running rapid lights, it is running heavies here. So we shall see what it can do here in this grid.
Oh, look at that Executor already. That's like one and a half volleys worth of damage. Beautiful.
Definitely.
But he's running away. He's gone. He's safe.
From cruises, a harder task to do for sure.
Interesting that the OSHA team has gone for DPS drones, warriors, Valkyries, and more warriors. You think they'd throw like Logi drones onto the Executor in this scenario when you're trying to outlast or outrun things?
Yep.
Both teams going for the Logi trade. Osprey being primary as well. And again, for them, same situation. All DPS and E-Wart, no... Oh, there is Logi. Never mind. He's got a single set of Logi
there are some
light drones.
But the drones aren't moving to him yet.
Nope. No, they're not. Not at all. Interesting. And now both teams have moved to opposite sides of the arena, and now the staring contest begins.
I think that if it goes as is, I think that the Osprey is the bigger threat here than the Exec.
Yeah, potentially. However, the Executor is entirely off of his own reps at the moment. He's got no backup, so if his answer runs out, he's in trouble. At least what I assume is an answer. I don't know what he's got fitted.
Definitely. The downside is once his Ansel runs out, he can still run his Ansel, although way less effective. He can run it. The Osprey, if it has an ancillary shield booster, that is going to delete his cap to even get a single cycle off. So it's
it's never a fun experience.
Way bigger of a cost for him to run that Ansel.
And we can see the Kitsune is apparently annoying someone because he's now being shot.
I'm painted too. Thick red line
Ooh.
coming down from the Hyena there.
I'm sorry, just my brain. I always look at a paint, just think someone's screaming, "You!"
Kind of point out the obvious here.
Yes.
Like a class teacher taking out the laser pointer, pointing out what needs to be read.
Yep. He's still being hit, but all good. Meanwhile, all the DPS drones.
Oh, Stork is wow.
Yeah, that's all the DPS drones that got on target. Warriors,
Off-
Valks, everything plus damage as well.
Another countdown started for the red team before the link
And now they
difference
go to
starts
the
to get
hyena.
even
All
bigger.
drones on the hyena now as well. So the hyena's now the next thing getting absolutely dunked on by drones and potentially a good volley or two. And yeah, potentially
sure.
Osprey also jammed. Yeah.
By the looks of it, he doesn't seem to be putting reps onto anybody yet. Now he is. He's got reps
there's
onto
rep.
the hyena.
Yeah.
Definitely
Well-
leaning very much into blue team here. OSHA violators.
Well, we might be living in the cursed timeline where OSHA wins. Can't have that. Actually, no mind. The OSHA violators. We're good. We're good. Kitsune still being shot occasionally, as well as the Executor. Again, the Executor has no real support. He just has to rep for himself, and then he dies. You'll see a
Definitely.
bunch of Hornets on him as well, trying to slow down the Executor.
I wonder if he has reloaded his Ansel in the off time that he had. If he has, then it's
I don't think he
definitely
had
a
long
lot
enough.
more tank time.
I don't think he had long enough for that, unfortunately. It would be
Yeah.
bloody cool, though.
He looks to be repping very hard, which is promising. Kitsune's still
Yeah.
staying alive, so it looks like he's doing some hindrance. Osprey Navy getting shot.
The constant disruption from the Celestis and the Kitsune is definitely giving this Saudacar team a real pain in the behind.
Definitely.
Osprey Navy now being hit.
Especially with how Raven lock range is already not notoriously good. So Raven isn't even shooting torps. It looks like he doesn't even have a target locked here, which is downtime for the damage. But the exec
get
is
pretty
still getting
cruised.
hit heavy.
Yeah. Just checking why, but by the looks of it, it's just a bunch of drones, and the opposing team is currently closing. Actually, yeah, Drake Navy's
Raven
charging
got
in
within
on it.
lock range now.
Yeah,
Raven is,
Drake
and
Navy
there falls
charged
the
in.
exec.
Yeah, Drake Navy charged
This
to the
makes it
Raven. Both
hard.
of them got on target. That's not looking good now. The Hyena goes down too, so now it's
Hyena's
an
down.
unsupported Raven, but they've got Logi. The other team does not. They can start hurting them.
True. I think that the Kitsune was a very vital part to OSHA's strategy here, which means that now that he's going to fall, this is definitely going to become way, way, way easier for the red team.
They spent a lot of their slots on E-War, and watching it all die, not looking good. This might start really swinging their way.
They can take that
Osprey
Celestis out too, then it's just kind of over for them. Only thing they have going at this point is links from the Magus, but how much is that worth without a Logi?
Yep, Osprey now being primaried as well, so he's having a bad time.
Osprey falls, this could definitely switch it up. This is in a time like this without Logis where links become very big. Getting that like 20-25% bonus to your tank and buffer is big.
This is a very odd one. This went from nothing happening to everything happening at once in 2 kite comps. But Osprey's now running away. Osprey, I think, actually might have got out of range and going for a beacon. So the Osprey's probably going to survive this and then come back later in this match. They need to retarget to another ship.
Typhoon's looking to get within range. Wow, oof, Magus getting hit hard here. Osprey looks like he's indeed going to survive this one.
Yep,
Magus goes down. Getting
I think
harder
at this point,
for
OSHA violators have been beaten by OSHA. The red tape, the yellow tape has come in and absolutely ruined them because Saudacar has actually got themselves back into the driver's seat after a really rough start.
Yeah, Osprey looks to also be getting some shield pack. I can't tell if that's an Ansel reload or just buffer regen. By the looks of it, just regen.
That's not an Ansel reload, no way. Yeah, he just jumped as well.
Osprey Navy gonna fall here very soon. Yep, those cruisers are inflicting their heavy volleys that they're known for.
Yep.
Sci-fi soon to follow by the looks of it, so not very good. John B gonna fall.
Osprey jumped in, and I think he just kind of got himself killed there, not gonna lie.
Definitely.
In my opinion, probably should have jumped from one beacon to the next and kept his distance until his Ansel reloaded.
Yep. Drake Navy and Raven are both capable of being very, very tanky, so the Osprey could definitely have just jumped around, delayed a little, and then only came into rep once there was some heavier damage on grid. Once this Cyclone fleet falls here, it's not much I think that this Typhoon can do against a Drake Navy and a Raven. Unless he's able to trade down the Drake Navy for their Cyclone fleet.
I think the Cyclone fleet will go down first with a good chunk, but the Drake Navy's not going to be too much longer. Typhoon's going to get some damage in ASAP. hold on, looks like the red team's drones. They've got light drones, but I think they're using their drones to try and murder the opposing drones. They're not trying to rep or actually, they are trying to rep. There you go. A single flight of light shield drones are all that Drake Navy has.
He has got 20% armor left and a dream to survive here.
Oh, and the Dishonor drones have come out. The Drake Navy drops the Hornet ECs at the last second. I've seen this so many times on TQ. Dishonor on you. Dishonor on your cow.
Typhoon repping up its armor here.
Yeah,
Can he
gonna go
hold
down.
out?
He's going to go down real soon. There is no reload period for Cruz. He is going to get chunked and killed.
Definitely.
Even if the Drake Navy
Navy
goes,
also
Typhoon
itching
won't
it
hold.
out. There he goes. Oh,
Well, would you look
what a
at
match
that?
we had. That was interesting. Went from very chill, 0 APM to everything going down in a split frame. Back to the desk we hand it.
Another grade from Amar. Damn, I'm thirsty. Ah, that hits the spot.
Farmer's Park could be anywhere.
Pew, 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 pew. Pew, pew, pew. I buried the pot.
Well, we are back from that, what is equivalent to a Chad of a show match there, as both teams sadly have been eliminated at this point, but are just playing for pride and to see how they do. An interesting matchup we have there with an armor comp and a shield comp, both kiting. Deebs, could you take me through why maybe one team might have had an advantage in that matchup and why the other team did not?
Well, I think both teams had advantages in different spots there, but one of the things is when you're kiting with shield, you tend to be a little bit faster, you do a little bit more damage in return for having a little bit less support. But if you're trying to run away from someone else who's doing the same thing to you, that extra damage and that extra speed can really make the difference there in being able to either catch or run away from whoever you're trying to kite.
Yeah, it was interesting to see some of that E-war there. Misty, would you like to talk about maybe how some E-war could have been either utilized better or how losing some DPS for more E-war might have affected that match and how they could have played it better?
Yeah, I think it's kind of funny that, at the moment I say, oh yeah, teams aren't going to sacrifice a cruiser slot for a Celestis because that loses them a bunch of damage. They immediately do it. And I think we see the consequence of it. At the beginning of the match, there was the potential that the Ocean team would be able to use their Kitsune and their Celestis to effectively neutralize like the entire Sardaukar team. Having your Kitsune paired with a Celestis means that whenever you jam a target, if you do end up missing a jam, you have the option of using a scan-res dampener to make it extremely long for that ship to be able to lock anything else. So if you focused everything on just the Osprey, for example, you could jam it, you could damp it so that it has to get super close to lock anything, or it can take like 30 seconds for it to lock something, giving you more time to cycle your jammer if you wanted to, or you could spread your damps across the entire enemy team and stop them from being able to do much damage. I do think that the mix of ECM and damps that they had wasn't effectively utilized, because I did see that they were dumping everything into the Osprey at one point, freeing up the Raven to kind of start shooting targets, and we saw the exec go down not long afterwards. I also think that losing a DPS ship for a Celestis is huge in a 6v6 tournament. You only really have like 3 heavy hitters. That's going to be your battleship, your battle cruiser, and your cruiser slot. So giving up the cruiser slot and just having basically 2 damage ships does mean that you have to execute properly and pray to RNGesus that you get your jams off when you need to, or else it's going to take you forever to slog through the enemy team. So I think we saw that basically come to fruition in that match, which is disappointing because it's fairly interesting to see these high technical setups executed in a tournament format. I think that they still had a chance to win with a little bit better luck and also a little bit better E-War placement.
Yeah, I definitely agree. If you're going to switch out a damage ship to throw in more E-War, that ship actually becomes more valuable based on your piloting skill. And it does seem like maybe an extra damage ship would have helped them there, or a little bit better use of those damps. Deebs, based on what we saw there, it seemed like it was a very slow beginning to that match. And I definitely know why one team had a slow start, but what was the other team doing, and maybe what could have they have done better to start that match off?
Well, again, with that Celestis in that slot, that removes a good portion of the damage that they're going to be able to do, maybe 20% of your overall damage output, and then they just generally have low damage, right? That's cruise and heavy missiles or rapid heavies, but they are relatively speaking low damage output. So even with the ability to apply that damage freely, it's just not that much damage to apply. So if that Osprey is undamped or unjammed at all, and it can put reps out, it's going to be able to do really, really well and just tank. And whatever's being shot, as long as it's not the Osprey itself, is going to have no problem surviving that, which is exactly what we saw. They, even with the ability to put their damage anywhere they pleased, it just didn't matter.
Yeah, another thing, bouncing off of something Misty said, when you do get rid of those cruisers, you gotta fly them properly, which makes this more of a skill-intensive setup. And a few things we could talk about with skill intensivity. A few things seemed burned out for a team that match. And when you're flying high skill intensive setups, Misty, how hard is it to manage your heat, and how important is it to really micromanage every single part of your ship?
Yeah, so in local, we do have a little local chat in the arena for teams to communicate between each other. Typically, this is where the refs will post like, okay, warping is unlocked, please warp to the arena, that kind of stuff. Someone mentioned that there were burnt guns at the end. I believe that might have been the Typhoon burning their guns towards the end, trying to get the last bit of heat out before they went down to kill that Drake Navy. It's extremely stressful, and it's different from TQ when you're playing in a tournament format, whether that's on Thunderdome like this tournament is, or whether that's on TQ like the Alliance tournament is. In a 6v6 or a 10v10 format where you have to manage all of your modules perfectly, it's very easy to accidentally cycle something one extra time trying to get the best out of the ship that you can, because it is a high stakes kind of tournament, right? You want to be performing as best you can. Not heating something is wasted. That's a wasted bonus that you could be putting into the match to try and swing it your way. And it's also something I think that a lot of players won't necessarily be used to. I don't think many players are used to performing their PvP in front of an audience, right? Whether you are used to nullsec or whether you're used to solo or small gang, typically it's just going to be you and the people that you're on comms with talking amongst each other, all kind of coordinating. But you're not going to have people kind of sitting on the sideline watching, critiquing, criticizing, commentating on what you're doing. And that all adds another level to the type of PvP performance that we see in tournament setups. Not to say that it's daunting and that you shouldn't do it. You shouldn't strive to be involved in tournaments. It's just something that people need to get used to, and also kind of just place out of their minds. It doesn't matter what people think. It doesn't matter how many people or who's watching or who's speaking. What matters is your performance and how comfortable you are on the grid. And I know, long-time tournament veterans also kind of struggle with that sense of unease or nervousness when it comes to landing in the tournament for the first time after, a half a year, a year's break. So it's something that we all struggle with. But yeah, I think that definitely came into focus in the match a little bit with the burned weapons.
Yeah, as I said in the beginning, this kind of was a show match because both teams were already technically eliminated. Deebs, when you go into a show match like this, you're a team captain, so you might be able to give a little insight on this. How important is continuing to practice or trying things that didn't really get to try a ton, or maybe showing off a comp that you didn't get to show off in the feeders? What's going through your mind as a captain, and what maybe are you going to put on grid during a show match, and how serious are you going to take it?
I think that depends really heavily on who you're facing. I've definitely done show matches where I'm friends with the enemy captain, and we decide, we talk to each other because it's a show match, so it's not collusion. And we're like, hey, we're going to put on a show. Let's do something weird. Let's do something fun. Uh, or agree to play something in some way. We've done where we both just did rushes into each other just for the maximum explosion time. But on the other hand, if you're looking at maybe you don't know the captain as well, or maybe there's still matches for you to participate in somehow, you might play it a little closer and play it closer to a real match. And I think it kind of depends on if you're doing the show match as part of the regular schedule like this, or if it's actually a show match where you're getting licensed to use AT ships or maybe drop dreads on grid or something like that.
Yeah, it definitely seemed like both teams brought fairly decent comps there. Maybe a couple interesting choices, but it seemed well rounded, and like they're both just trying to put a comp on grid and give a good match without it being too funky there. If you haven't noticed, one of our matches has been removed as one of the teams did drop out. So our next match is actually going to be starting at around 18:30. But before that, we're going to talk about some comps that we've seen and maybe some comps that we look forward to seeing later today or in the near future. Misty, can you walk me through maybe a comp that you haven't seen yet, or something you've seen briefly that maybe didn't work that could have been done better, or you look forward to seeing?
Yeah, give me a moment. Because Wingnut asked me prior to the stream yesterday, what kind of ships are we expecting to see in the tournament? What are my predictions? And I think most of my predictions have essentially come true. I did highlight the Roke, Raven, Typhoon, and Abaddon as the ships that we were likely to see performing well in the tournament. Raven, I did include alongside the Typhoon as cruise platforms, I would like to specify, not as torpedo platforms, which they have been used as and thus have failed. Um, Navy BCs, that kind of stuff, all expected as well. I am kind of surprised that we haven't seen as many drone setups with the Dominics being available, with the Merm being available, Merm Navy, Vexor, VNI, all being available. Not seeing as many drone setups as we have has been interesting. But I feel like with the removal of Tech 2 sentries, or faction sentries, I believe, not included this year, teams just don't see drones as being that viable anymore with just the heavies to use. So maybe we see a couple drone setups snuck in a little bit later. We've seen them perform well already in the tournament, so I'm surprised that we're not seeing them more.
Gotcha. And Deebs, is there anything that you think we might have not seen yet that you're looking forward to seeing or think might work?
I was gonna say drones as well, honestly. Like they struggle a little bit in some ways, but on the other hand, they are an excellent way to deal with the E-war that everybody doesn't like. It doesn't matter if your Dominix is jammed, as long as something on your team isn't, your Dominix can assign drones to it. Doesn't matter if your Dominix is jammed. Same thing. So that ability in this sort of tournament where E-War is to be expected, and it's going to be very effective because there's only so many ships that it needs to put its E-War onto to really impact the team. Being able to avoid that E-War entirely and just go, no, I don't care that you jam my Dominix. I'm still going to do all of my damage to you. That seems really powerful. There are obviously many downsides to the drones. That you've got drone control issues, you've got range issues, you've got the delayed damage. All those are true, but just being able to ignore E-War in a tournament where we have seen how strong E-War really can be, it seems like a powerful thing. It seems like something that teams might take in a case. They leave E-War open, they bait you into bringing the E-War, and then they go, I don't care that you brought it. I'm just going to do that damage anyways. So I think drone's interesting. Other than that, not really. We've seen how missile rush is not working well. The Ravens with torpedoes not doing great. I don't see how blaster rush is going to do any better. So I think that drones is really the open question here of can it be used? Can it be used effectively?
Yeah, it's interesting, like, looking at some of the bans, it seems like a lot of teams have been banning E-War. And, you maybe could get some different bans in there if you brought a drone setup, which is a little bit better at dealing with E-War, because E-Waring drones only goes so far, and E-Waring the ships that throw the drones out there also doesn't really go too far. Uh, Interesting you said the Raven. Misty, we started the stream off talking about rush versus projection and how the Raven has maybe been faulting against projection setups. That was a cruise Raven that last match, and it seemed to work. Do you think that's a good pick, or do you think teams should maybe start avoiding the Raven with how it has been performing?
I don't think the problem was ever the Raven. I think the problem that everyone has had here is that we always say torpedo Raven. I believe the torpedo part at the very beginning is the problem. You have a cruise Raven, it has the projection, it gets a max velocity bonus to its missiles, so they hit fairly quickly when you do end up shooting. And I believe that also adds to their range, since they still have the same flight time, they travel a little bit further, I believe. They are good cruise platforms, but they do require support to make sure that they are replying properly, because they don't get any application bonuses, I believe. The reason that the Typhoon, I believe it was mentioned in the previous match by Lemon, where the Typhoon and the Raven, when you look at their bonuses, the Typhoon might come out on top, is also because it gets an application bonus to explosion velocity, which means that ships that it's shooting can be moving slightly faster, and it will still apply really well than, compared to a Raven. So I think Cruise Raven, absolutely fine. You can continue to bring the Raven, just use it properly, please.
Yeah, it definitely does seem rushes are weak, and cruise missiles and rapid heavies have been doing a little bit better than torps. And rails and, longer range energy weapon systems have been doing it better than blasters. So hopefully you guys figure that out. A little theory crafting tip. Maybe try a different comp than rushing. Our next match is coming up semi-shortly, and I'd love to talk about it a little bit longer than we've talked about the other matches, as technically speaking, both of these teams are an A and B version of the same team from the Alliance tournament, both coming from the Rage Quit Cancel sub team. We have Yeet Fleet Elite versus Rage Sub Cancel Quit. Misty, do you know much about these teams and maybe who's on each team right now, and where an advantage might be, or who is on what team that might help them win matches?
Well, looking at the teams, I recognize Debug's name, Debug being on the Rage Sub Council Quit team. I'm not too familiar with the Elite Fleet Elite names. I do think it's interesting that we do see two teams from the same Alliance tournament kind of background ending up against each other in the tournament. It'll be good. It will be a good match, I think, because the teams should also be familiar with how the individual pilots fly, which should add another level to the kind of decision making that we see from both teams in this match. When you're landing against a random team, there's kind of the idea that you're not too sure about what calls they might be making or how they're fitting their ships and what their theory crafting process was. When you're going up against basically A team, B team, you're probably thinking along the same lines. You might have practiced together, so it should be fairly interesting to see what kind of mind gaming stuff they try and pull out here.
Yeah, it is currently a best of 3 set, I believe, with Rage Quit being up 2-0. And it's the third time they'll be playing today. Third time they'll be playing will be this match right now. Deebs, I don't know if you've ever been in a situation, but when you have an A and a B team playing each other, there's potential that they were practice partners for this tournament at some point, and they kind of know how each other works. Do you think we're going to see some interesting comps here, with it being, a 2-0 lead and, the teams knowing each other? What can we expect there?
I think the first thing you're going to see are bans that are going to be hyper targeted at a particular comp that the one team or the other knows. We really don't want to face that. We fought that in scrims. We never figured out a way around it. Or maybe you go a couple levels deeper and it's, I know that I want to bring this. Therefore, I'm going to ban this, which makes you think that I'm going to bring that counter that won in scrims. You can get very deep very quickly with that sort of thinking, uh, especially when you know the enemy team, you've practiced with them, they know what comps you like, they know what comps they've won against and how you've won. So being able to go and cut through that and decide where do you draw the line at, I know that you know that I know that you know, and making sure that you don't fall into that trap of getting so deep within it that you end up playing yourself and you pick a comp thinking that obviously the bans that I did mean that they know that I'm going to bring a rush comp, and surprise, I'm actually bringing a kite comp, and you just did bans that make the kite comp really easy to beat. So that's a big concern when you're playing with somebody that you know, knowing how they think and then tricking yourself and making it more complicated than it needs to be. At the same time, knowing what they bring is a powerful tool. So it's a delicate balance there in terms of making sure that you don't play yourself while using that knowledge and that power to your advantage.
With that, I'm going to quickly go over the bans as teams are starting to land in the arena. We are seeing Sentinel, Hyena, Geddon from Yeet Fleet, and Rage Sub banning the Raven, Typhoon, and Vigilant. An interesting Vigilant ban, maybe a targeted ban, maybe not. But these teams knowing each other, we will find out as we send it to the arena for this match.
G'day there, mates. Welcome to the arena, and we've definitely got an interesting one as a Scorpion has landed on the arena. And I've got Misty with me today.
Nice. Hello, hello. Yes, just on the desk and now in the arena. Ready to see the Scorpion go to work along with the Carries and the Blackbird. So quite an E-War heavy team coming out here.
Also a Deacon. Is this the first T2 Logi frigate, or did I miss one yesterday?
I think this might actually be the first T2 Logi frigate that we're seeing, and it is interesting to see because it does have a lower sig than the cruisers, potentially. So, you know, if you 10 MM fit it, it might stay alive fairly well against some of the projection teams we're seeing.
Potentially guaranteed reps for most of the match, but not a lot of it.
It is basically like a buffed up Logi drone. You know, you could treat it as such.
Exactly that. Slightly upscaled Logi drone.
I
You know what,
think
the
it
opposing team's got
actually...
some weird chips as well.
I think the Deacon sits at about like 2/3 of what a Logi Cruiser would do, so it's not terrible, and it is harder to kill.
Just want to point out, of course, the Ashimu Cruel combo on the other side as well. So they're also picking a slightly out of left field comp as the match is underway, and here we go.
Now, it'll be interesting to see the opening moves. One of the things to note is that there's not much damage coming out of the Rage Sub Council Quit team. We do see the Blackbird starting to take some damage. We are going to be seeing the Carries spreading its damps around to try and limit how much projection we're seeing from the Abaddon and the Prophecy Navy issue. And they're going to have to start passing the jams around between the Scorpion and Blackbird to keep those two ships alive, because they are crucial to their setup here.
Yep. I'm just kind of looking around. I'm trying to spot what weapons were on the Scorpion. I wasn't expecting guns. Let's say that.
Yeah, I'm thinking that with so much committed to the E-War here, with the Scorpion and the Blackbird, there's nothing that's going to really stop the Abaddon, the Prophecy Navy, the Ishimu from burning in and doing its close range damage, which means that it is going to be essential that they coordinate their jams well, so that if something starts taking too much damage, the Scorpion or the Blackbird can make sure that they jam them out and stop that from happening.
Yep. And kind of mildly unfortunately for this ECM team as well is that the opposing team went full lasers, and they are running Kaldari's shield, so EM Therm they can plug the hole a bit, but it's always a bit painful. But that Blackbird has so many rep drones. Look how many they've got. It's like 2, 3, 4 flights.
This is going to be a very slow match, my friends, in the Twitch chat. But, you know, sit back, relax, appreciate the fact that you are not on grid being jammed out by 2 ECM boats and damped out by carries.
ECM, do you mean skill issue, right? It's definitely your fault you got
you know,
jammed.
if you get jammed, just don't get jammed. You know, it's that easy, to be honest.
Yeah, see, it's all your fault, man. Like if you got jammed, man, that's just on you. This is just a bad pilot.
Because they do have so much ECM on the grid, though, we do see the crew hitting half armor very slowly, but there's a very slim likelihood that the Augury will be able to lock at all over the course of this match. The only thing keeping the crew alive is a small set of rep drones, one set, I believe, that has just been recalled to the Magus. So even less now keeping this crew alive here. Probably not long before it starts to die.
I'm also loving watching the crew just casually following the following the Deacon around, trying to nude him out. Like he was following him all around the fight here. So the Deacon of Melinda is probably really low on capacity, if not entirely out.
Yeah, the Kurora is definitely doing a good job. I know that I've criticized Kurora game before in some previous matches. I think it was with a Tholos and the misapplication of the Breacher Pod, but in this particular match, Kurora is doing a great job of staying on the Deacon, making sure the nozzles are running so that the Deacon is permanently under cap pressure, having a difficult time repping that Blackbird. But with so much jams and damps on the grid, it's kind of hard to put damage out regardless.
So I have a mild question here. Why is the Augur anywhere near this fight? He's in the middle of this brawl.
I mean, with the damps coming out from the carries, especially if they're optimal range damps, you just want to be as close as possible. I don't think it
understand
really
being
matters.
close. I do understand being close,
yeah.
but like he went through the middle of the fight.
I don't think it really matters where the Augur is, because the only real damage coming out from the ECM team here is drones, right? And the Merm Navy presumably going to be able to apply drones out to probably like 80 or 100 if it has a couple of drone link augmenters in its high slots. So you might as well just sit close.
Yeah. Like I said, I perfectly understand he's being close. I was just very amused by the idea of like watching him go through the middle of the fight.
Well, why be? Well, you know what? Just stop bumping. Just stop bumping
Yeah,
him away.
exactly.
You know?
Just start bumping in your org. Man, we are definitely topsy turvy world, but that's what these kind of comps bring. It makes things really weird.
Now
At the
you
moment, no one's breaking.
Wingnut as a solo pilot must have been on the receiving end of a gang that has jammed you out and just kind of had you sit there. If you were an Abaddon or a Prophecy Navy in this match, what would you be trying to do to break free of the ECM and apply some damage?
I mean, let's be honest. Depending on what your tools you've got, there may be no option. You're just gonna have to sit there and take it. But yeah, there's in this situation, there's not really that much you can do besides just try and murder the guy.
You thinking it's a pretty hopeless task for the Abaddon and the Prophecy Navy at the moment? Because
It's
we
basically
are
a game
seeing
of
the
like
Deacon taking damage here, and along with the Scorpion.
That's their win con there, trying to like nuke the Deacon out and maybe snipe through it. Or potentially if something else gets too close or weak, they can try and go for that. But it's unless they grind through a bigger ship and don't get jammed out, there's not much they can do. Because even let's say they go for the Scorpion, right, and they get it down to like half armor. If the Scorpion just decycles its jams and then Blackbird starts jamming out DPS ships, they can rep it back up to 4. Nothing you can do about it. It's painful, man.
Like we promised, it's a very slow match for those of you at home. Oh, the Deacon is taking a chunk of damage.
Magus is starting to have a bad time too, as well as the Deacon. Hold on.
The Deacon has been locked by the Abaddon and it has gone down. It's been webbed, it's been neutered, it's been shot by the Abaddon, it's dead. The Magus is about to go down too. Leaves us in an interesting spot.
Trade. That is a trade.
Now, with the change in circumstances, I believe we're swinging in the Abaddon and Prophecy Navy's favor. Do you agree here, Wing?
I definitely think it's in their flavor, that's for sure.
I mean, little misspeak. Might as well just sign
That's all
off
good.
now.
But yeah, they can now potentially nuke the carries as well, maybe even the Ponty, and just start eating the lower. But honestly, they're just going for the Blackbird. They're just going, who cares? Logi's gone. Let's start murdering these ships.
I do wonder if part of the strategy here for the Rage Sub-Council Quit team was just to hold their, teammates on TQ at ransom for as long as they possibly could. There was no intention, I believe, of killing anything really on the other team here. I think it was just about surviving for as long as possible.
I mean, you look at the DPS bar for Rage Sub. It hasn't even lost anything because there's nothing but like non-DPS ships that have died, and it's just minuscule. It is painful. You weren't killing anything, especially with an Augur around.
I do think that anyone who bet on the Rage Sub Council Quit team with their Twitch channel points is probably punching air right now. But I'm sure that the Rage Quit or Rage Sub Cancel Quit team has probably made a lot of Twitch points with this strategy.
Oh yeah, this is the. They're probably calling that this is a rigged match, something because this is definitely not what we were expecting to run into. Very fun to watch though. Like it may be slow, it doesn't seem entertaining for some people, but I loved watching this. These
Yeah.
kind of matches that bring out the weird.
There's a lot of like technical stuff that goes on when you have so much E-War on one team. Probably doesn't work so well to have 3 dedicated E-War ships in a 6v6
And no
tournament.
DPS. They still haven't lost any DPS in their field, and it's still nothing. And there we go. Now they've finally lost some DPS.
I mean, how does this match up against some of the other setups that you've seen today, Wingnut? Do you think that this ECM setup would have had a chance against anything that's been fielded today?
With the amount of damage they brought, no. But potentially against other, like if they brought a little bit more of a mixed comp in it, like more DPS in it, it could maybe work. But it's going to be very dependent what you're versing. It's definitely fun to watch though because it's just painful for all involved. And yes, this is indeed what peak theory crafting looks like. Indeed.
Nice.
Control's all you need, right?
Now, local chat's been interesting, I see. I'm going to save that little tidbit for the desk, actually. I need something to yap about once I get back there. Yeah, we're just seeing this match slowly wrapping up. We have a Pontifex sitting out at maximum range. Please yeet yourself out of the arena, my good man. Come on, Lucius.
Let's see how far you can go.
Do not do this to us.
I think he's doing it. I think he's doing it.
Good,
Come
good,
on,
good,
buddy.
good.
Come on, I believe. Bullet.
You have to time it right. There is an art to getting as far out of the arena as you can, and it's activating the jump beacon as you hit the very edge of it, so that you can make it as far out as you can.
I think he's stopped.
Okay, we're being held for ransom. Unlucky. Oh, yeah, okay. So what we're seeing here, and we can use this as like a little educational moment. We can focus the camera on the Pontifex for the stream for the last minute. Within the arena, you have a cube of beacons. They're all about 100 kilometers from each other, which means you can jump from beacon to beacon permanently and basically just avoid the enemy team. And that is what we are seeing Lucius doing at this moment in time, lining it up, doing the jumps, and yeah, holding all of us for ransom for the next 30 seconds.
The best thing about it as well, it can be used defensively and offensively. You can use it to make a battleship go like 300k across the arena by jumping 3 times because they're almost perfectly in range.
Yeah,
you can do some really aggressive moves.
If you're good with your angles, you can bounce from beacon to beacon until you're like 90, 100 kilometers from the target you want to land on, and then send it. And we have seen teams make good use of it, but not so far in this tournament. So, with that running down to time, the match is over. Thank the Lord. And we can send it on back to the desk.
All back from Amar. Damn, I'm thirsty. Ah, that hits the spot.
Farmer's Bar could be anywhere.
Pew, 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 pew. Pew, pew, pew. I burned the pot.
Welcome back to the dust from that match of playing who has the smaller attack bar and who can waste as much time as possible. Deebs, how about we talk about the choice of bringing that Deacon instead of an Augur? Why a Deacon, and why is that maybe a good move or a mistake here?
So the interesting thing with the Deacon, as a lot of you forget, it's much harder to kill. It does far less reps, but it is really, really difficult to kill. It's difficult to apply to, especially if it's out moving around. And when you've got a team that was set up like this, where they intended to just stay in a ball and just not get hit, that's great. potentially still questionable. The Deacon has a little bit better job of staying alive when it's got rep bots on it as well. It's got those higher T2 resists, so even a small amount of rep from T1 rep bots goes a long ways with the Deacon, so that's pretty good. Other than that, it's worse in all ways, right? It's got less range, it does less rep, but when you're intending to keep the enemy from doing just a little bit of damage, maybe that's a brilliant move.
Yeah, indeed, a little bit of damage there was at the start of that match. Misty, you said you saw some very interesting things in local. How about you talk us through what you saw?
Yeah, so I believe the Rage Sub-Council Quit team mentioned that one of their members was not taking part in this particular match for a reason that has been is not disclosed to us. But without the absolute Chad that is Damascus Kadesh on grid, it's possible that they just decided to throw something fun together from a theory crafting perspective and send it. So yeah, we saw the fruits of a full E1 no damage team.
Yeah, it is interesting to see them not fielding one of their better players, but I guess when you field a comp like that and just try to make the match last forever and you don't want to risk your elo, it is a good move. But with how long that match decided to go, we have to start talking about our next match right away, as I don't think much of us want to go through how that last match went. So we will just move on to the next one. With our next match, though, being between Odin's Call Me Maybe and Aggressively Mid-Tier. Odin's banning the Geddon, Sentinel, and Crucifier, and Aggressively Mid-Tier banning the Arbitrator, Mollis, and Carries. Misty, what are your thoughts on these bans?
So I think the Armageddon, again, pretty standard ban that we've seen fairly frequently today. It does put quite a bit of pressure. I've said that it pressures armor comps more than it does, like shield brawling comps, but it does impact shield kiting comps fairly fairly significantly too, due to the additional newt range that it gets. So, there's the potential for an armor brawling setup or the potential for a kiting setup. Paired with the Sentinel and Crucifier ban, I'm assuming that they're going to want to be kiting at range. Whereas we have the Morlus and Carries bans coming out alongside the Arbitrator, meaning that we're also likely to see a projection setup coming from aggressively mid. So, I think it should be a fairly interesting match that we're going to be watching here.
Well, they have landed on grid, and we are going to have to send it over to the arena to get maximum coverage of this wonderful upcoming match. So here we go. Let's send it over to the arena and see how this goes.
Now, that's probably going to be one of my favorite matches of the day because these are two damn good teams with two interesting looking comps.
Yeah, I welcome back. Hello, me, to the arena.
Hello, me.
Yeah, we've got somewhat of a mirror, with the primary difference here being the fact that we have a Hurricane Fleet issue instead of a Prophecy Navy issue. Wingnut, what are the differences between these two ships? Why would you bring a Hurricane Fleet issue here?
One is thick, the other one is damage. So this looks like, I'm just double checking, that is artillery on that Hurricane Fleet.
There is indeed artillery on the Hurricane Fleet.
I do love seeing an arty boat. It gets so smart. To be fair, this team is pretty projection focused with an APOC instead of an Abaddon as well. And look at that, they've already punched that auger into armor.
Yeah, so with the added projection and the added punch that the artillery provides, it does seem like they're going to try and go for the augurer first. But likewise, they're going to be trying to trade their augurer and their hyenas on each side respectively. Oh, hyenas going down very quickly.
Hop one down. The second one's potentially going to follow. Like, also both teams, I think, are using bunch of rep drones. No, never mind. Odin's using a lot of DPS drones, whereas Rote has used a lot more Logi drones.
Yeah, after that first hyena went down, we haven't really seen much damage coming out onto the Odin's team. So we're just waiting to see what Rote actually decides to do with their ability to project. It does look like the Rote augurer is taking damage, but it does have red bots on it, so it's going to tank for a little bit, but we'll see if they can make a difference here.
I'm also very amused by watching the APOC and the Abaddon pass by each other, neither scramming or attempting to bother each other, and going past. Going for the... and also the Phobos is also just pointing each other. So yeah, this is a very interesting match.
I think we've seen some potentially poor piloting coming in from Kibbet in the Phobos here, allowing the Abaddon and the Prophecy Navy to burn past his Phobos and get on top of the Augurer, which means that their Logi is going to go down without the ability to trade. They're currently shooting a Phobos at the moment, which, while it does remove some tackle, it's not going to make a huge impact, I think, on the potential outcome of this match.
Meanwhile, the Augurer, Reamer about to go down. He's being pressured by a lot of DPS and drones. He's got Logi on him, Logi drones trying to save him, but I don't think it's going to be enough. They're trying to make a Logi trade while doing it as well. They shot the Phobos while he was out, when the Augur was out of range. And there you go, they did make the trade. Okay. This has continued to be interesting.
Okay, so they've corrected their potential mistake by dumping so much damage into the Phobos to begin with, but now they have to grind back through all of that armor that the Phobos just received back, which means that all of the damage that they were shooting at it before is wasted damage. So this is where target priority really comes in strong. The APOC is taking a lot of damage here.
Yep, this is where the APOC is not as good as the Abaddon, taking hits. As you can see, he's getting absolutely chunked into hull already. They're going still for the Phobos. I guess you're kind of committed to it at this point, but once the APOC goes down, they're kind of in trouble.
Yeah, it's possible that they were trying to get rid of the Phobos of Paradigm earlier because it had the Apocalypse scrammed down and tackled, but it still doesn't make sense to me to try and go through something as tanky as a Phobos with an Augurer still on the grid and able to rep it every now and then. When the Phobos is pointing something, it can't receive reps, but the cycle time of a point is only 5 seconds. 5 or 10 seconds for the Phobos, so it's very easy for it to drop that point, receive a cycle of reps, and tackle again very quickly.
I was also hoping the Hurricane Fleet was going to be able to run away and start, sniping things with artillery, but unfortunately he is hard tackled down by the Prophecy Navy, so unfortunately he will not last, and I think that's going to be the last little hope for aggressively mid-tier here.
Yeah, it does seem to be the case here that, the Odin's team has put its ships to better use, I think. Having the Abaddon and the Prophecy Navy still alive up against just the Phobos, the Pontifex, and the Hyena means that they're at very little risk of actually dying here. The worst that could potentially happen is that the Phobos, Pontifex, and Hyena just try to draw the match out, which wouldn't really serve much purpose in the tournament at this point. So
Just keeping an eye on things, just having a look-see and whatnot, but it seems like they're going to be kiting around the arena now with their 3 ships, maybe trying to make something happen.
the Phobos is burning for a tournament micro jump unit. Let's see if they try to send it out of the arena to, achieve a little record here, or if they just decide to try and preserve their free ship. It looks like preservation may have been the instinct here, but Phobos turning around, trying to get some damage in on the Prophecy Navy, goes down, and now it's just a cleanup crew.
Oh no, trying to clean things up with a Prophecy Navy and an Abaddon, we may be here a while.
Hey, Prophecy Navy shoots out pretty far. It's one of the bonuses that it has over the Harbinger Navy, right? That 25% optimal to medium energy turrets, and then the additional 10% per level. So it's a pretty snipey boat.
Not wrong at all.
Now,
I'm just my brain is always so used to them not having enough range.
Now they are absolute beam boats. So not surprised to see them so frequently in the tournament. Do you think there was anything that the Apocalypse and the Hurricane Fleet issue and the Phobos could have potentially done differently to change the outcome of this match here, Wingnut?
So in my opinion, the APOC and the Hurricane Fleet were more projection focused compared to the Abaddon and Prof Navy, which were very happy getting in brawl range. So the fact they basically burnt directly into the middle of the match, like the Abaddon and the APOC passed well within scram range of each other. I feel like that's not a situation the APOC should be in. I'm not one of these parts, they're smarter than me. But it's one of those situations where I'm wondering, if you're going to do that, why'd you bring an APOC? It's just not as good as the Abaddon in this scenario.
I mean, I'm inclined to agree with you. I think the positioning of the Rote team left something to be desired. But, I'll discuss this more on the desk as we watch that Pontifex go down and we throw it back to Chad.
Have you or a loved one been scammed in local? Has someone promised to double your risk? Have you been hit by a hypernet scheme? If you answered yes to any of these questions, it's time to set safety to red and fire back. Hi, I'm Lemmy W. Isk of Isk, Shogatsu, and Carbon Attorneys, Jita 44's premier litigation law firm. The time for being a victim, it's over. We will ensure that you get the restitution you deserve, and those who wronged you are punished. Don't choose some pencil-pushing, paralegal F1 monkey. Choose a legal FC who will jump through gates for you. Choose quality. Choose ISK.
Welcome back from that exciting match, a mirror match at that, with laser projection setups from both ends, which comes down to execution and target calling. And to start that match, it seemed like one team actually had a good head start and then fumbled it. But Deebs, what did the one team do with switching targets at the beginning to maybe get a lead there?
So we saw the team try to go for the auger at first. The auger, and with no E-War on either side to really prevent damage to the auger, the only thing that they could do was run the auger out of range. But with those weapon systems that they brought on both sides, really, there's nothing. There's a lot of range to burn out of. So by pushing the auger out, the auger runs away as far as it can, tries to get out of lock range or at least out of like high DPS range. But in doing so, it went so far that it couldn't put reps on that hyena anymore. So once they see that the auger is too far for them to shoot, or even maybe they could still shoot it, but the auger is too far to rep, they managed to just do that quick swap to the hyena. They tackle it, they throw damage on it, and it evaporates before the auger has a chance to turn around and come back into the range. So that's an excellent use of the ability to push that auger out, the ability to keep damage and to zone it out, and then make use of that. They didn't seem to follow up on that, but that was a great start.
Yeah, it was a great start. Hyenas are a pretty good ship to have in those kind of comps for application, range control. But getting it down and having a hyena of your own, you think would get a good advantage. But instead, it seemed like the Odin's team kind of made a counterplay there. Misty, would you like to talk about maybe using a Phobos a little bit better on one of the teams there to maybe screen?
Yeah, I think I mentioned it during the match. We watched the Abaddon and the Prophecy Navy essentially burn directly through the Rote Phobos. And one of the reasons that you would want to bring a Phobos in the first place to a tournament like this is to make use of it as a tackle ship, right? The warp disruption field generators that it gets in its high slots can be scripted with either a disruptor, fairly useless in the setup, or a scram, which will turn off micro warp drives. What they should have done is scram down the Abaddon and the Prophecy Navy to make sure that their Augurer could stay alive longer and potentially push their Hyena out to web them down while they were further away. Failing to do both of those things led to the Augurer dying fairly early on, and then the match kind of spiraled from there. So I think piloting or decision-making errors really led to the result that we saw there, which is a shame. I think that with some slight tweaks, they could have probably won that match.
Yeah, I definitely think going for that Logi was a decision that kind of flipped the match early on for them, forced the other team to make a move onto their Logi, and during that time they just pumped damage into their less tanky APOC, which kind of allowed that team to snowball the match, utilizing the Abaddon, more tanky and more DPS heavy ship based on their target calling. With that, though, our next match is actually starting to come up very quickly, and that is between Templos Calcif and Edict. But the bans coming in, Templos banning the Get In, Dami, Sentinel, really showing they don't like potential newt ships. And Edict banning the Carius, Get In, and Sentinel as well. Some interesting same bans here. Deebs, what are your thoughts on these bans?
Well, I think the other thing we see there is that the Armageddon and the Dominics are the two potential drone ships for battleships in this format. So it would seem like Templars really don't want to see that drone comp that we haven't seen at all today, really. So an interesting choice there. That's something that they do. They don't want to see that. Potentially, maybe some E-War heavy stuff that is countered to some degree by those drones. And then on the other side, it's kind of that standard comp. We don't want to see the T2 E-War frigates there. We don't want to see the get in. We don't want those long range newts. Not terribly much to read into that, but definitely from the Tempest side, we don't want to see drones. So I'm expecting more.
And Misty, these bans are seeming to be a little bit repetitive here throughout the day. Do you really think that these ships that they're banning are that powerful or that game changing that you can't really avoid letting them be open?
I think it's so there's two different kind of theories behind it, right? One is how strong a ship is in itself, and then the other one is how comfortable you feel playing against it. So the Sentinel by itself is a very strong ship, but you can deal with at least half of that fairly easily by just not being in newt range. If it gets too close so that it can newt, then you have a higher chance of killing it. The ability to pilot the Sentinel is really what determines how strong that ship is, and some teams might not feel comfortable allowing it through because of the potential for the Sentinel to be good. Whereas something like the Carries is just, if you had 2 brain cells and you took 5 seconds to activate each damp, as long as you activate them and then AFK during the rest of the match, you're probably going to be okay. It's not always a high intensity, high skill ship. If it's flown well, then it definitely amplifies the impact that a Carries can have. But it's also harder to deal with because it can sit 80 kilometers away and still do its job. So I think it's, in a 6v6 format, E-War is especially strong, which is why we're seeing the Carries ban so much and the Maulers ban so much. The Sentinel, I think, is more of a comfort ban, just to make sure that when they're going up against good teams, they don't get owned by it.
Yeah, one of those ships that definitely punishes if flown correctly. And in the tournament scene, flying your ships correctly, can punish the other team and win you matches. But with all that being said, teams have started to land on grid, and I would like to hand it over to the casters to give them as much time to talk about some of these extremely fun ships we are seeing. So take it away with our new casters.
New casters? What are you talking about? Well, we're back to the arena, and we have an Apocalypse versus a Typhoon this time, but I think it's the first Confessor we've seen today.
I'm assuming it's still me in here. And yeah, we have seen the Confessor. I do think it's interesting that they've decided to only commit to having links on the Prophecy Navy issue instead of bringing a Magus or a Pontifex as well. It does mean that once that Prophecy Navy goes down, there are no links left on the grid. But having the Confessor does mean that they'll have a better chance of pinning down targets or chasing that Kitsune around if they really wanted to.
Oh, if the Kitsune jams the Confessor, it's just going to shoot and potentially even kill it. Like, the Confessor in sharp, so it does a lot of good damage at range. So the Kitsune have to be a little bit careful about who he tries to, ruin, really.
Well, the other thing to keep in mind is that we do see that the Kitsune is going into a Maulus, right? So the issue with the Kitsune Maulus matchup is that regardless of whether the Kitsune jams you, the Maulus can always lock the Kitsune. And by applying those damps, it means that jams are not going to be much of an issue apart from at the very beginning of the match.
Definitely. It's going to be curious to see how things play out, but that Kitsune has definitely picked the wrong match to be in.
Well, I mean, it looks... Oh, okay. It looks like both Evil Frigates are the primaries
Oh,
here. The
wow.
Maulus going down immediately to the projection from the Prophecy... the APOC and the Harbinger Navy here.
Apparently they heard me and are trying to prove me wrong immediately. Shouldn't be surprised, I suppose. Confessor now being... Oh, wow. Look how quickly he's getting absolutely pummeled. This is where the APOC and Harb Navy do very well. Projection and just deleting stuff.
It is really just a case of removing all of that lower end, that potential tackle, and the issues that the Kitsune were going to be facing. Now the Kitsune has free reign to burn around at the back of its team, put jams on to the Augur if it wanted to, or the Ashimu to get rid of any tackle that the Ashimu could be doing and allow his team to kind of burn around. So I'm expecting that the Templar Scouser team kind of just wins this one outright.
Yeah, I saw the Vedmak of Wailing trying to go after the Augur. He fortunately did get caught and held down by an Ishimu. But that doesn't really matter, as the Harb Navy and APOC is very happy applying to this Augur as they wish. So, oh, he caught one. Unfortunately, the rest of the team is perfectly happy to ignore that.
Yeah, one of the things that we haven't really spoken about too much, because we haven't seen them too much, is, things like the Vedmak or the like Damavik, etc. Brig ships with their unique gun. The more you shoot, the higher the damage of the gun, provided you continuously cycle it. In a tournament setting, you can just cycle that gun on anything. Like, you don't have to shoot the primary if it's not in range. You'll still stress that Logi out. We do see the Augur going down here, and it's just going to be a case of working their way through the rest of the team. I don't see a way in which this match really swings at this point with the Kitsune and the Executor still alive.
It would require like a half a team boundary to be able for that to work, and it's just not going to. They couldn't even kill the Vedmak, unfortunately. Usually, like as you said, the Vedmak just once he starts doing damage, just keep building up and building up and building up. And they don't have a Logi to stress, so everything he does at the moment is permanent damage, as far as I'm concerned. The Logi drones as well. It's like what 3 or 4 full flights. A lot of Logi drones on the Vedmak. There we go. Shimu down.
Now, again, Wingnut, this is the age-old question I always ask you, buddy. What do you think could have been done differently here?
Honestly, it was lost within the first 10 seconds, whether it was going to be potentially winnable to begin with. It was a lot of stuff coming in really quickly. In a projection comp like this, that low end was basically always going to die. One thing, I can't remember what, I was looking at the Confessor, I think it was in Sharps when it died, but it might have switched to the defensive mode. But beyond that, what do you do besides just get obliterated by projection?
And for anyone that's potentially watching who isn't too used to, Tech 3 destroyers or the tournament, what is kind of defensive mode on a Confessor?
Oh, mate. Defensive mode Confessor makes you incredibly resistant. I think it also reduces your signature, if I remember correctly. And it makes you a very hard target to hit and or kill. Whereas Sharpshooter gives you bonus and damage bonuses and range bonuses, and also gives you a sensor bonus as well to avoid ECM. So I suspect he did that to counter ECM, potentially, and might have got dunked for it. But then again, he might have switched and I didn't see it, because watching the animation for the modes takes a little bit of time.
Yeah.
I do love it.
I will say that there's a cooldown, right, when you switch modes. So, if you switch to Sharpshooter at the wrong time to try and get damage onto the Kitsune, you have to wait, I think, about 10 seconds. Yeah, before you're able to swap back to the defensive. And, with the amount of damage coming out from the Hub Navy and the Apocalypse, that 10-second wait is probably not very ideal.
Oh yeah, if you pick the wrong button at the wrong time, you are dead. I've flew through a lot of Confessors on TQ, and it is an art form to learn. I'm not great at it, but you feel like an absolute god when you get it right. Like going for the sharps or the final shots to kill something.
Yeah, we do see some missiles coming out from the Typhoon, going onto the Kitsune here, some pretty little explosion effects as the missiles strike, but I fear it is too little too late to make any difference in this match. So it is just a case of, once again, watching the cleanup crew go to work, making their way through that Typhoon, which is dropping fairly quickly.
And it's good to see Templars come up with a match like this as well. They've been having a few less than stellar tournaments recently, but coming into this match with a clean sweep, I'm happy. I'm excited. See if they can continue this momentum.
Yeah. Do you think Templars is another kind of like fan favorite for potentially winning the tournament?
Yeah,
we know that they've performed well in the Alliance tournament, right?
I don't know about winning the tournament anymore, but they're definitely going to get to like the top 4 area, in my opinion. Well, at least the most recent years. Fingers crossed they can get to the end.
Who do you think's actually going to win the tournament then? Who do you
don't
have your
ask me that.
Your money on, buddy?
Nope, don't ask me that. I'm just going to say
somebody.
Tuskers and move on.
Okay, jinxed Tuskers. Good job.
Always. I am a Tuskers fanboy at this point.
There we go. Okay, if Tuskers crash out and lose, then we know who to blame. Wingnut Cross with one S.
No. We're going to mute this part.
Well, the Typhoon has gone down, and with that last ship dying, we can throw it on back to the desk for a little bit more analysis about this match.
Wi-Fi. Scram and hope I don't get scrammed.
Holy goddamn stuff!
Drifter has me scrammed too. We need to clear.
Play it out, God.
Yeah, I'm logging off. This is fun game.
Dopamine.
Oh my God!
Welcome back from that amazing match where apparently 2 teams can lose at the same time, as Wingnut has jinxed Tuskers in the future. But on a serious note, let's talk about how awesome that match was. And Deebs, let's talk about some use of rep bots in that match and maybe how it helped them with some of the ships they had on grid.
Sure. So we saw an absolutely massive swarm of rep bots around that Vedmak, providing a good chunk of extra of rep power there, and especially against a team that brought slightly less damage, and furthermore was getting jammed out. So even less damage being applied to it, meaning once again those rep bots just more and more effective, as there's very little damage being applied on there. And I think that also notably, you had a cruise typhoon, which can apply fairly well, but it's still lower damage. It does struggle a little bit applying to things that move fast, like that Kitsune. Um, though obviously would have been applying fine to the Vedmak.
Yeah, and Misty, you pointed something out at the start of that match, and it was something that was talked about throughout the match. The choice of the Confessor instead of something like a Pontifex, where you could maybe get some links there to help combat the Ewer. What are your thoughts on that decision?
I think so. I've talked about screening a little bit, and the fact that with so many people dedicating their lower end towards links or E-War, there are fewer ships to tackle down. Like the enemy battleship if it tries to burn in. I think it's good to see the Confessor, or at least the attempt to use the Confessor as something like a tackle boat. Unfortunately, I do think it kind of fell apart immediately the moment it got shot, which may have been an issue with the mode that it was in, which we're not explained during the match. I do think that it's okay to bring just a Lynx battlecruiser, and I think teams should probably lean on that a little bit more to free up their lower end and make sure that they do have the tackle that they require to hold down the enemy ships, go capture the enemy ships, depending on the strategy that they're trying to play. So, or they could just make use of the Magus as one of their screening boats too. So I don't hate it. I just think that it was not executed the way that they perhaps wanted it to be in this match.
Yeah, it's one of those things where if you use the Confessor correctly there, maybe it helps you out. But if you don't use it properly, yeah, might have been better off having those links to help you against that Kitsune, which did seem like it was wrecking that team. Uh Deebs, let's talk about the Vedmak. It is a ship we haven't seen a ton yet, and it seemed like it did its job in that match and really made an impact.
Right. So one thing to note about the Vedmak is trig guns in general have excellent tracking, which means in this case where your strategy is sort of predicated around taking out the enemy low end and particularly taking out that enemy E-War so that your E-War can operate unopposed. Vedmak's going to be really, really good at that. It's got pretty good range. Not excellent, but pretty good. It's decently fast, so even without that extreme range, it's able to go out. It's able to put that damage on there. Notably, it ramps up its damage if it keeps its gun on. One thing that you can see happen is any sort of slip from the enemy team, and that ramped damage that started out as mediocre or even low will suddenly do really well. A wrecking shot, for instance, from a fully ramped Vedmak can easily take out a frigate or at least bring it so low that it just falls over with the next little bit of damage applied. So that's something to really look out for, where those Vedmaks and those trig guns in particular are sort of a different thing to fly against.
Yeah, I'm hopefully going to see more of these Vedmaks. I'm excited when I see them land on grid because, like you said, the tracking is great, and when you're guaranteed to have frigates and smaller stuff on grid, that can turn the tide of a match, especially with how we've seen these frigates kind of set the tone of a match, believe it or not. Um, so I'm hoping we see more Vedmaks, and maybe people will start to like them with how well they have been performing. We have another match coming up, though, between No Local and Arrival. And No Local has decided to ban the Sentinel, Typhoon, and Carriers, and Arrival has banned the Arbitrator, Crucifier, and Sentinel. Misty, these bans have been pretty popular. Obviously, we've talked about the things that we want to bring into these kind of comps. What do you think these people are going to bring when they ban stuff like this?
Yeah, so I'm thinking that, again, Kitsune available. I think it's interesting to see so much E-War banned out, most of it being around that Dragon Disruptor or that Guidance Disruptor. I imagine that they are just going to want to bring something that is potentially... it can go one of two ways. It could be fast moving long range or slow moving long range, but either way, they want to be able to shoot at distance. That is basically, I think, both teams' game plans here.
And Deebs, it seems like projection is kind of being used as the meta in this tournament. Do you think that if these ships don't get banned, we might tend to see more Brawl caps again, or do you think these bans are slipping through as people understanding Brawl might not actually be the move here?
There is a possibility for that, but I don't think that these bans are really targeted at brawls. Brawls, ideally, you would ban other things if you wanted to bring a brawl comp. So there's something like that. But having these banned out isn't stopping you from bringing a brawl comp by any means. And I'll also say my team fought both of these teams yesterday, and seeing what is available. Is very interesting for me because I don't believe that either of the comps that they brought yesterday are banned out at this point.
Well, then, I guess we're going to see the reruns of the matches with the Deebs. But with that being said, the arena is got weapons unlocked, so let's get some quick predictions before we throw it over there. Misty, who do you think is going to win this match?
Oh, difficult one. I'm going to say Arrival definitely has the potential to win this match.
And Deebs, being the person who has played both of these teams, who are you going to give the props to here?
Oh, it's a really hard call. I'm going to say Arrival as well. No Local really outplayed us, but we kind of outplayed ourselves there. Where Arrival kind of beat us more straight up, so I'll have to give it to Arrival there.
I'm going to do the controversial take here and take No Local, as I have some people that I really look up to on Arrival and don't want them to get casters cursed and lose. But with all that being said, we're going to send it over to the arena as people are landing on grid, and they're going to run us through this match.
And welcome back to the arena. And the Armageddon was not banned for once, and thus it is immediately picked. Though the other side has followed the trend of the third APOC in a row for us. I'm now rejoined, of course, by Lemon Eater. How you going, mate? Hello?
Could potentially be muted there, buddy.
Did he mute a raider? That's fine. I'll be alright. I got this on my own, mate. Don't worry about it. Let's go check what the Armageddon's fitted with, shall we? Is this a rapid heavy one? It is indeed a rapid heavy Armageddon. All right, then.
Well, it's
sure,
interesting.
definitely.
Oh,
hey,
sorry.
he's back. Lemon's back. Hey, buddy.
Good to be here, especially after a match win. Always feels nice.
Yeah, that's why he was gone for the past few matches. Lemon here was off doing his own match in Arena 2, and he come back bragging to me, yeah, we won. We dominated.
Always feels good. Looking at the Geddon, we can tell that it's not full neutered. In fact, has some guns. So
Yep, rapid
it's
heavies.
definitely going to be a hybrid there. Yep.
I always love telling people that the Geddon doesn't get a missile bonus, so people fitting rapid heavies like, sure, but you're losing some. It is a drone boat in disguise. Match is underway, and they are rushing in with their Devoter, Prophecy Navy, and also the Ponty following up.
Yep, indeed.
Balls being
Maulus
friendly.
is got hit hard in that first volley there.
Yep, I think there might be the Confessor potentially going for him there, but the Confessor is now being shot and has switched back into defensive mode. See if he
Always
can
a good
survive
choice
under
there.
Logi. Get that momentum up. Come on, buddy. Oh, okay, Confessor does survive, but the Maulus is being primaried again. A lot of the low end taking the punishment at the moment.
Indeed, it is. We will have to see how they're going to use their drones here, because all their damage is in fact Amar locked. They are all laser ships. So curious
Yeah,
to
we
see
see
what they're going to do.
Got a bunch of Valkyries chasing
Reactors
that
might
Maulus
spool.
down.
For sure.
There's a
Once
bunch
again,
of Valkyries
trying to
chasing the Maulus. Look at him. He's running in circles with like 2 flights of Valkyries chasing him.
and some friendly rep bots too on there, trying to help balance it out.
Man's got a manual pilot of Maulus in circles around his Logi. Meanwhile, it looks like they are slowly closing in.
With the task. APOC looks to be getting hit here pretty pretty sizably. Although APOC is, although not notoriously a very tanky ship, it has still got quite the buffer and a lot of Logi rep time. So giving the Logi a lot of time to increase the death of that APOC is definitely going to delay the match. So I wonder how good of a choice that is here for blue.
Well, he's got a full flight of berserkers on his head, plus the damage coming in from other ships. So they're seeing if they can bust through him. But meanwhile, they're also pressuring the Executor as well. Looks like there's another set of drones on him. Yeah, a single set of infiltrators.
Yep. Keep in mind that with the Geddon on the blue team, they don't necessarily have to kill the Logi in this scenario. They can just nude him into shambles. Although currently it does not look like as if the Geddon has his newts cycling on the Execore. So yep, Execore still cycling reps on the APOC. Meanwhile, blue team's Logi is getting bullied into pits here.
Yep, this is where the APOC does very well. It's currently projecting out and engaging the Augur as
Ooh,
well.
Kitsune falls. Wow.
Down. There we go. Oh, I bet you that was the Confessor, but I can't exactly tell. Me check if the Confessor's still in defensive mode.
Oh yeah, and look at that. Geddon not being jammed by the Kitsune immediately puts those newts onto the Execore, as we can see. Heavy newts by the look of it too. That is going to put the Execore into a hard place to rep. Although it might look like they're trading Logi here. Look at those skins. What a nice color theme.
That Augur, he's doing so well. He's got a bunch of rep drones on, but a bunch of DPS and laser shooting.
Execore falls first. Wow.
Yeah, Executor goes down first. The Augur's been pressured the entire time.
Definitely very unfortunate that they're trading a Logi plus Kitsune for the other team's Logi, and even then the Augur is still living his last seconds here, barely surviving.
Exactly. There's got a good bunch of Logi drones on him as well. He's just constantly keeping his speed up as well.
And APOC's at half health as well.
Yeah, that's Howling Wind, as far as I'm concerned, has won them this match. Because the longer he's taking to die, the more they can rip into this APOC without getting any return fire.
Definitely, and APOC isn't notoriously tanky. And then the Geddon itself, Geddon is, with its newts, can definitely put pressure onto the APOC of running local tank guns and any tackle mods or tracking computers you might have at the same time. But by the looks of it, no tracking computers. The effect is, I don't see the effect on the ship. He does have a sensor booster, I think it is. Yeah, by the looks of it.
The old bugbear of Amarian battleships is like, hey, you've got lasers, and now we've capped you out. And yep, APOC down. And at this point, well done to a rival. This is a very well done match.
Yep, not much that can be changed here by this point. Confessor's about to get nuked into oblivion here as well.
I am an idiot, by the way. I just want to say that out loud. I said the Confessor was shooting the Kitsune. He's on the same bloody team. I'm an absolute moron. It's like 4 a.m. That is my excuse, and I'm sticking with it. Meanwhile, they're taking down the Prophecy Navy next.
Yep, once again, capping him out is definitely forcing him into a hard position. By the looks of it, he is not even shooting his... Oh no, he is shooting his lasers.
Yeah. Like the one thing about the Geddon, it can basically like ruin multiple ships, and honestly, it can also be a tackle boat via its newts alone by turning off micro warp drives. I do love Geddons. They are a threat, but they're not that much damage, you know. They're a nice amount.
But it can be a very utility-wise source of quote-unquote E-war, because it can nude out dams, it can nude out a jam ship potentially, especially frigates if they're not running cap boosters. You can either force them to choose between tackling and damping, which is big because it's either you're catching the ship or he's not able to fill his role. So it can be very versatile.
Yeah. I also love, like, the Geddon is definitely like the like Swiss Army knife kind of ship as well. I have good memories, and I always talk about this. Back in the old 5v5 scrims, we used to use Armageddons as Logi back in there because we weren't allowed to use real Logi ships. So we used Armageddons as Logi while also using DPS drones. So you had this Logi boat that was killing the enemy.
Definitely. Its ability to almost use its highs as utility is very cool. Oftentimes fitted with newts because that's what it's bonus to, but its damage isn't reliant on the highs like basically every non-drone ship is.
There is no damage bonus for the highs. There is no damage bonus at all for the highs. You can fit whatever you want. Yep. I fit rapid lights to them in TQ.
Ooh.
Scepter Murderer. And you only lose about 100 DPS, but you'll get it back in application. Anyways, Phobos down. Well done to a rival.
The Teenage Mutant Ninjas team out here taking the victory with those skins. Good style.
All right, let's go back to the shoot and see what they think about it.
All back from Amar. Damn, I'm thirsty. Ah, that hits the spot.
Farmer's Bar could be anywhere.
Pew, 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 pew. Pew, pew, pew. I burned the pot.
Come back from that amazing match, where we saw the two armored teams duking it out to see who would prevail. With that, though, Misty, an interesting use of two ships there and really making sure that they bounced off of each other with their gameplay. What did we see from the Arrival team there?
Yeah, so I think we wanted to highlight, the effects that Damps and Again can have when they're paired up on the same team versus a logistics ship, right? The Damps will limit the ability for the logistics ship to be able to lock out to range, which means that it needs to burn in closer if it wants a chance at actually applying its reps to its teammates. Now, the closer it gets, the more impactful the Geddon is going to be. The Geddon gets a range bonus to its snooze, but along with that, it doesn't really get much in the way of bonuses to any other kind of like high slot weapon systems, like Wingnut was saying. So you can have as many newts as you want on the Geddon, basically, as many as your high slots can take. And the closer that Logi gets to rep its teammate, the closer it also gets to you. So those newts are more impactful. You cap it out, you stop it from repping for a different reason, and then the Logi just finds itself in a really tough spot. So I think that's a really good pairing up of Damps with strong newts, and I think that was used to good effect in this match.
And Deebs, it's really interesting that Mollis seemed like it was going to die off the gate, and also that Og seemed like it was hovering at low armor and structure for quite a while. Why might that be?
Well, so the Ballus took a couple hits before it got its transversal up. You saw every time it changed direction to make sure that it didn't run out of range of its own damps or out of range of the reps from its friendly rep boat. It took another bit of damage. So every time it slows down, it becomes easier to track. Lasers hit it, it has a bad time. And then the AUG, we've seen the E-War having an impact, right? If you can't lock the AUG and shoot it, you can't do damage to it. You have drones on it, and you do have the Geddon for bonus drones, but other than that, both of those Logi cruisers hanging on for quite a while under pressure, largely due to that E-War from either side, sort of preventing that that damage that could be applied to be applied well.
Yeah, it definitely seemed like that was a well-practiced comp, utilizing those damps to allow their Geddon to do things offensively and make some moves, but also utilizing those damps to pull in and out with the damp ship itself and the auger from, I'm getting shot, I need to survive mode, to, hey, I need to get reps on my team. And really just buying as much time as possible and allowing that Geddon to utilize all that utility. But with that said, Arrival takes that match, and we're going to go talk about our next match between Premature Evacuation and Bright Side of Death. And the bans are in, and Premature Evacuation has banned the Cruci, Sentinel, and Tholos. While Brightside has banned the Hyena, the Roke, and the Ashimu. These are some interesting bans because they're things we haven't seen yet. Misty, could you talk about maybe why some of these newer bands are showing up here?
Yeah, so really the bands that we want to talk about are the Roke and the Ishimu. We've seen the Ishimu banned once or twice, I think. Maybe today, maybe over the course of this last weekend. But the Roke is a fairly strong ship. If you fit it with rails, it has great projection. It can shoot out like 100 and something, 200 kilometers. So there's nowhere in the arena that would be safe. You can also tank fairly well. It gets a 4% resistance bonus per level, which means even if you're going up against something like an Abaddon, you're still going to have a fairly high resistance profile into lasers. So definitely something that teams might want to get rid of, and it just does a lot of damage, right? The Ishimu, I think, is interesting because it's paired with the Hyena. So it looks like they're trying to remove long-range webs, which I think is a fairly interesting strategy to go with, and it does make me wonder what they're going to be trying to bring onto the grid. And I'm trying to remember if the Vigil Fleet issue is still open. I know the Crew is still open, or sorry, if the Vigil Fleet issue is even allowed. But I know the crew is allowed. Okay, it is allowed. I know the crew is allowed. The Vigil Fleet issue is allowed. So there's still 2 other webbing ships that premature evacuation could bring if they wanted to, but they're just not as strong as the Hyena is, and they don't fulfill the same purpose as the Ishimu does.
Yeah, I wonder if these are slightly targeted bans with the Ashman Hyena, as the Basilisk, the captain of the premature evacuation team, also on the Hidden Leaf team in the past, loves to fly his web ships. So those might just be targeted bans. Deebs, the Tholos. What's your thought on the Tholos here?
Tholos is interesting, right? It in principle can be doing a lot. We've seen it just simply explode every match. Without really doing much in the matches where it didn't explode. It didn't seem to be piloted well, but it does, in principle, do a lot. It makes Logi's job hard because without sacrificing anything, you can be causing damage, pretty significant damage to multiple ships on the enemy team. It particularly impacts things that are very large buffer. So your Prophecy Navies, your Abaddons, it's going to be doing the most amount of damage there due to its unique damage mechanics. So that seems like a sort of thing saying, hey, we really want to bring these big buffers. We know that our Logi is going to go down. We want to be able to stick around for a while afterwards. We don't want the Tholos making our Logi's job any harder than it has to be, or doing a lot of damage simultaneously to all of our ships. But it also seems to imply we don't know how to stop the Tholos, which also isn't that hard. So
Yeah, it seems like the Tholos has been used in a lot of rushes and has not done a ton of work other than maybe one match where it did get a few breaches off. So that seems like a weird ban, but maybe they didn't want to face a rush. So, with that being said, though, both teams have now landed in the arena, and we are seeing a ship that is Wingnut's favorite, so we gotta hand it off to him so he could talk about one of his favorite ships.
All right, here we have Bright Side of Death and Premature Evacuation fighting it out. We see a Hyperion here, although this one's going to be a Rail Hyperion. Rail Hyperion with a Rapid Heavy fitted
Wait,
into
what?
it
I
as
saw
well.
that as well. Yeah, there's a single Rapid Heavy.
This is quite the fit here for sure.
I was going to say, big respect to that team as well. They've got color-coded skins that are all this lovely green and yellow. I'm going to pretend that's the Australian Olympic colors just because it makes me smile.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see what the theory behind fitting that Rapid Heavy in there is.
Well, I can give you
I'm
the
excited.
answer. More damage! We need more damage.
Oh, that is true. Utilize that one free high slot that you can fit a turn into.
Yeah, I mean, if you plan to stay away from the opponent, what's the point of a nuke or a smart bomb, right? Just stay away and shoot them with the extra missile.
Definitely.
The other side, standard Abaddon. Nothing really to write home about, but it's a very solid ship. It's not even skinned. SMH.
Yeah, some might say that might be a Papega moment right there. Should have gotten the full skinned team after those mutant ninja team. What am I saying? After that last skin set, it is definitely hard to top it off now. Everything else looks boring in comparison.
Make me laugh, it hurts. All right, well, match is underway, and we'll see how this goes. With another, this I think is the second Rail Hyperion we've seen, and I'm really excited to see it. We've got a little crew on the back as well.
It seems like in general this is kind of a brush versus kite in essence of the Abaddon wants to get as close as possible to maximize the damage, and the Hype wants to get further away from the Abaddon to reduce the Abaddon's damage while still keeping its damage relatively high. Prof Navy and Crew War and Phobos going in to tackle like the tanks that they are, especially the Prof Navy. It has the EHP of a giant.
Yep. The Beastars team tried to snipe the Magus, failed. Meanwhile, their Executor is being absolutely pounded. I don't see any real Logi drones on it. I see like one flight of mediums, and that's it. So that Executor is almost entirely left on its own.
Yep. Now there's the second flight that got finally put onto him properly. It's a question of if he can tank.
Side, similar situation. Actually, he has a bit more Logi drones. I think he's got 2 flights of Logi drones on the Executor of Infinitas. So he's got a little bit
but he's
more
getting hit like a truck, in fact.
Oh yeah, Abaddon's reaching out and touching somebody, as well as the Prophecy Navy.
Definitely. Abaddon can be a menace to these Logis in particular because it can apply relatively well for the level of DPS that it has.
Just keeping an eye out, keeping an eye. Crew is currently... I'm actually surprised the crew is doing as well as it is at the moment. I think the crew is actually webbing off one of the Phoboses. Okay, Phobos seems to be hard tackled. As Infinitas is getting real low. Really low. He's holding on for now. Meanwhile, Zaire is being absolutely hit as well.
Yep. Yeah, he's dropped his hit point now so he can receive reps. Wow, Infinitas falls down there. That is definitely a unfortunate loss of the Logi. And now they're going for the Phobos that's deep within grasp, getting tackled there by the enemy Phobos, which is going to make it hard. Now committing a little more damage onto the Crew as well, who's taking a little bit
They need to
heavier
go for the
hit.
trade potentially, and they're trying to get the trade of the other Executor, but it's not quite working for him. He is
Yeah.
left to the other side of the arena at hyperspeed. That man is just legging it.
Oh, he might. He's definitely needing to turn here.
He's doing his best. Yeah, he's going straight out. Is he going to turn away? He's
Oh,
still
now he's
going
trying to
pretty
turn.
straight. Okay, there's his turn. There's his turn. Okay.
Lucky
108,
survives.
119, 119k,
Well,
6k from the border. Well done.
someone's living on
Live on the edge,
literally the line
exactly.
of death.
Yeah.
Okay, Phobos falls now as well from premature evacuation. This is harder and harder to win because with every DPS ship that they lose, the harder it's
Yep.
going to be to crack that Logi.
I do like
Magus
Bazzer and
looks
the
to be...
boys. I like Bazzer and the boys, but unfortunately, B-Sod, I think it was a couple of ATs ago, had one hell of an upset. Everyone was running Nightmare Rushes, and they brought an armor counter to it and beat it like handily. So I've always got a bit of love for B-Sod, and it looks like this match they're going to show up again.
Although there's still potential here because Brightside of Death just lost their Magus, so once those links run down, that Execore might definitely be easier to kill, although it's a question of do they still have the DPS needed now that the Crew War is going to fall soon, and the Prof Navy is also getting hit. Although, let's not underestimate the Prof Navy. He has got quite a few tens of thousands of EHP under his belt before he's going to die, so...
Right, his Navy should be about to go down. A bunch of drones just got put onto him, so he is about to be removed. But he's managed to last an incredibly long time. The Crew is about to die. The Prophecy Navy's going down pretty quickly. Big
Crew War has
respect to,
been...
how do you pronounce that? Signoria? Signoria Castro. Well done to you, mate. You've managed to keep that Executor going for longer than anyone probably should have.
And there falls the exec. Now it's just a question. This is actually looking winnable for both sides if they're playing their cards right, although I definitely do think this is favoring Brightside of Death. There goes their Crew War now, getting harder and harder.
The problem as well is that the Hyperion wants to kite away with using his rails, but if he does, the carriers will just damp him down and force him somewhat closer again.
Definitely.
Like
Dealing with that carries is probably the weakest spot here for the Hyperion. So as long as that carries pilot, Gray is doing a good job and keep in orbit as he is right now, it's going to be hard for him to do much. And the Prof Navy goes down, so I think that this is basically game over by this point. They just keep the hype damped, kill the Magus, and then finish off the hype, and then it's over.
Yeah, the Phobos of Zera as well. Once he killed the Prop Navy, he started moving away from the Hyperion. He's burning away. He may not be able to get any reps, but he's going to try and pull away from close range DPS ammo, and maybe
He still
even
has those
survive.
medium armor rep bots on him, so
Maybe.
I think those rep
he's
a little
gonna
more
die,
than
but he's
those.
just buying time.
Oxygen.
Yeah, there
Oh
he
yeah,
goes.
definitely. There he falls down. Had a chance.
Exactly. He bought a
And
bit
now
of time
Magus is gonna fall too.
Yeah.
Ooh, whoa! Carries is getting hit now. This is if that Carries falls, this definitely could be bad. Although with Prof Navy very close to the hype, as long as the Prof Navy keeps tackle on the hype, Abaddon is just going to win that stat war, and Abaddon's close to the hype as well.
Such a weird world we live in, where we're hearing that a Prop Navy is tackling a hype to get an Abaddon close. Usually you want to stay away from the hype, but welcome to the weird wormhole we've entered.
Definitely. I mean, this rail hype stuff can definitely throw people up if you're expecting for it to brawl. And now it's just
rail
the hype
hype
left.
with rapid heavy. What a world.
Never
What a
thought I'd
world.
hear that.
Fibers.
So what? Okay, so send them off to the tiebreakers. Fair enough. I don't know why I make that sound like the ship breakers, but we'll go with it. So yeah, this Hyperion will go down by the looks of it. So well done to B-Sod. Biggest respects.
Very, very good stuff that they did as a team as a whole. I think they had a good strategy and they executed it very well.
Exactly that. And it's not that Premature Evacuation did particularly poorly. It just unfortunately came up against a comp that was played reasonably well. Good logi trades, good piling overall.
Who do you think the match favored in the beginning?
It's a hard one for sure, because like theoretically, Premature Evacuation could have played more for range, but going through an Abaddon with what the comp they had is always going to be a hard call. The Navy Prophecy can reach out about as far as the Hyperion can too, so it's not like they have really good range control. I don't know. It's
Definitely.
I think it was kind of B-side weighted, but it could go either way. Honestly, things always change.
Definitely was very execution heavy. A lot depended on how the pilots made the choices. And in this case scenario, Bright Side of Death did a great job. Also gave us a little bit of pizzazz and energy into there by bringing their logi literally 6 kilometers from the boundary.
Oh, with that, let's
We
go
hand
back
it
to
off
the desk and see what they think.
Loved one been scammed in local? Has someone promised to double your risk? Have you been hit by a hypernet scheme? If you answered yes to any of these questions, it's time to set safety to red and fire back. Hi, I'm Lemmy W. Isk of Isk, Shogatsu, and Carbon Attorneys, Jita 44's premier litigation law firm. The time for being a victim? It's over. We will ensure that you get the restitution you deserve, and those who wronged you are punished. Don't choose some pencil-pushing, paralegal F1 monkey. Choose a legal FC who will jump through gates for you. Choose quality. Choose ISK.
And welcome back from that match. It seemed like another mirror match setup with a few different changes in some ships. We saw Hyperion on one end and a laser boat on the other, but at that point, I think the low end actually made more of a difference there. Deebs, what do you think about that?
That was really interesting. Yeah, again, nearly a mirror match, some slight differences, and the big difference that we saw was the choice of frigate. Everything else more or less equals up one way or the other, but that choice of frigate at the low end makes a huge difference. One side brought a carries, allowing them to either save their Logi cruiser, force the enemy to bring their ships in closer to be able to apply better. Whereas you had a crewer, and crewer, powerful. It's got webs, it's got range control, but if it's damped to hell, or if the Logi cruiser is damped and can't rep that crewer, anything like that, you've got some pretty big issues. You can also use those damps, as we saw, to save your own Logi cruiser. If the enemy can't target your cruiser, excuse me, your friendly logistics cruiser, they can't kill it. And we saw that exec just lived forever and ever and ever, largely on the back of those damps preventing the enemy from being able to target it. We saw that only drones were applying to it, and the drones kill it eventually, and I think some guns at the end, but being able to reduce that damage output, keep your Logi cruiser around longer, allow it to rep more things, that's a huge advantage to have. And I think that's probably the key point of the entire comp.
Yeah, Misty, you mentioned in the back channels about some logisticals plays, some screening plays, some positioning plays. Would you like to run me through what you saw there?
Yeah, I just wanted to shout out Sonoria for, I think, making an excellent use of the Executor that they were piloting. At the very beginning, they began to take damage from the Basilisk's team, pulled back to the very edge of the arena to make sure that wasn't taking damage anymore. And then when the Phobos got pinned down by Virion Stone Shard in the Prophecy Navy issue and began to take damage, it began to burn back in to get reps on. Virion, of course, making the play because he wanted to force the exec back into range so that he could burn past the Phobos and get onto the Executor, which did eventually die. But the delaying tactics that Snoria used on the BSOD team to keep the Executor alive for so long and then get those final reps in on the rest of his team, getting them back to full armor, meant that, it was just an uphill battle. I think, for the premature evacuation team to turn it around at that point, right? They'd already lost their Execura, so they're already behind. And yeah, it just made that climb all the steeper by playing well. So hats off to Sonoria for that match.
Yeah, that was an interesting match where some piloting skill had some play in it, and as well as some ship choices. But with that being said, we have our final match until the tiebreakers. There will be some tiebreakers coming on after a break that we're going to be having. But let's talk about this match before then, between Sedition and Face Need No Loose. Sedition banning the Raven, Typhoon, and Tholos, and Face Need No Loose banning the APOC, Carius, and Prof Navy. Another Tholos ban. What's your thoughts on this, Mystical Might?
I think it is just a case of the Tholos has the potential to be good. I don't think teams have really used it well, or the Tholos hasn't really found itself in the position to be used well. One of the issues with a Thunderdome tournament is that we can't really see what fits teams are using for the Tholos when it does die, short of having the people that killed it send it in to us. So there's no like Zekiel or anything that we can go check. So I don't know how people are fitting their Tholoses, but like max tank with the pure intention of just spreading damage would probably be the route that I took. Maybe a scram in there as well to use it as a tackle boat. Doesn't seem to be the case, so I don't really know why it's been banned. I don't think teams have really been using it well. But the Raven and the Typhoon, I think, are understandable bans. They have been pretty good today as cruise platforms. It does leave things like the Roke or the Abaddon open, so there's still the potential to see projection coming out in the form of, yeah, the Roke, the Abaddon, or the Rail Hyperion.
Yeah, and interesting seeing that Rail Hyperion. We've been seeing a lot of projection setups here, and the Tholos kind of does not fall into that category. Deebs, do you have anything on these bans?
Yeah, interestingly, we see the Raven Typhoon Tholos banned, and no one banned the Arbitrator Sentinel Crucifier. So we've got most of the missile battleships banned out. Technically, you can fit missiles to a couple others, but that leaves tracking disruption wide open here. So I would be somewhat surprised if we did not see some tracking disruption on the field in this match.
Alrighty. And that being said, though, the teams have landed on grid, and we're going to send it over to the arena to our commentators, Wingnut and Lemon Eater.
All right, on here we welcome up Face Need No Loose and Sedition to battle it out. Right after all this discussion about the potential that the Vedmak has, both teams listened and they did not disappoint, let's put it that way. What are you thinking here, Wingnut?
I think Deeb's going to be very surprised because they said all the track disruption is open and no one brought any. They brought a Maulus each and everyone else has gone for every other type of ship imaginable. Meanwhile, we have a Scorpion. Just a solo ECM Scorpion, I guess. I'm going to see how that one goes. Hopefully trying to keep some pressure off of his Executor and his Vedmak.
Definitely. It also has the potential there of if the blue team Maulus loses the trade war, Face Need No Loose loses this trade of the E-Wars and the switch 4 Maulus manages to damp him, then the Scorp can definitely try and jam it off to free that off. And if they manage to jam that Maulus, then all it needs is like 1 or 2 damps from their friendly Maulus to keep him locked down, and then they have it.
Quick mention as well, the Scorpion has Rapid Heavies fit, so it's not some kind of full utility fit. It does have some teeth, though a Scorpion's teeth is not that much in this scenario.
Definitely.
This is very much a mirror match, though, eh? Except for that battleship, it is almost entirely a mirror match.
Yep. That Abaddon has massive damage potentials, and it's making sure to try and get close and to pump that into the Scorpion here. Forcing those heavy lasers with Conflag and their heavy pulse lasers onto him. Doesn't look like he's taking very heavy damage so far.
I'm just trying, again, I struggle with large lasers. I never can remember the models. That is pulses, right?
Yes, that is pulses indeed.
I always got to be sure. You never see large lasers in TQ, so I never got them really memorized in my brain. I always have to double check every time. Meanwhile, the Maul's getting pounded. Actually, the Abaddon is trying to shoot the Maulus of all things.
That is definitely a good change, because I think what is happening here is that Maulus is damping their own Maulus, which is causing them problems. Yep, it is. The Mollusk of Sarah Sargimermine is damping switch 4, which is probably why they're trying to get him off of there so that they can actually have their only E-Warship on grid be effective.
Yep. Also, I just noticed. Never mind. I thought I had a bit of an optical illusion there. Bunch of drones currently on the Scorpion as well. Like another set of drones on the Maulers. So a bit of damage being spread, but no real holes being made.
Yep, definitely. Exec of Vergard looks to be the one that they're targeting and trying to hit here. Although he doesn't look to be taking a very heavy hit. Surprisingly, Sedition doesn't seem to be able to pump out that much more DPS here on grid where they're pressuring him. Face need no loose yet so far. It looks like they're able to hold up.
And
Wow,
interesting as
Magus
well,
getting chunked here. Magus
the
goes down. Wow, okay. That's a big
Oh.
switch up there.
Yeah, that was
No
very
links.
sudden. Well, that puts them in a potentially bad scenario here, losing the links for their, which to help keep their Scorpion alive as well as their Execura. Not
Yep,
looking
true.
good so far.
I wonder what the play here idea was with shooting the Harbinger whilst the Exec is still alive here. I
Potentially
feel
to
like on
pressure
a
him to come in, I guess.
true, but I feel like on a comp like this where Faith Need No Loose is already like a little bit lower on damage, you would think that they'd be going for the priority Logi target. Now they look to be switching, but wow, they lose that Mollusk now as well. This is looking very unfortunate now for Faith Need No Loose here.
Yeah, I wonder if it's just a bit of pressure from the Vedmak trying to like force the Execura to make choices. And forget, they are rapid heavies on the Scorpions. They have to pick a target with that ship and shoot it until they run out of missiles. So it has a lot
Definitely.
less flexibility than the other comp does.
For sure.
Oh,
Its
Vedmak's
damage is
running
also
in.
not very big.
The Vedmak of Lost Touch is absolutely burning in there. Trying to get
It looks
on
like they're
top
trying to
of
trade
the
exit
Execura.
course. Death Touch
Yep,
is
yep.
spooling on Vergard, and Lost Touch is spooling on Kikin.
Why has they both got touch and they're both in Vedmax? What the hell's going on here? But yeah, the Harp Navy of Quan and Lost Touch is also going after their Execura, so they're trying to double team it quickly. This is
Yep.
weird, but the Execura goes down first. And they
Vergard's
still
fallen
haven't
as
killed
well.
anything yet.
And their damage ships are the only ones left by this point, so they're struggling on Ewar as well. So as long as that Mollusk can stay alive, he can definitely mess up the Scorp's ability to do the jamming work that he wanted to do, which is why I think a part of what's falling apart here. They're able to shoot ships other than their intended target of the Scorp here.
Yep. Well, unfortunately, with the Logi gone, even if the Scorpion does jam things, it just means they're going to kill the Scorpion, who has no ability to survive now. So this has gone their way. Very well done to Sedition here. They've got full control. They've managed to push through Face, Need, No Loose, Face, Loose, Need, whatever the hell your names are nowadays.
Face
And
Need
at
No
this point,
Loose, indeed.
Their name's always been a bit of a tongue twister.
By the time you finally think you got it, they just switch it up. Another year, another name.
That's the thing what everyone does. Trying to catch us out, are they? I see what's going on here. All right,
Ooh,
Execura
Execor
down.
falls now.
They
I
do
don't think
get
this
it,
is
but
enough to
unfortunately, there's
switch
nothing.
the match,
Yeah,
though.
there's no chance. There's no chance. They have less damage, less tank, less control.
And
Sorry,
no links
boys.
vitally as well. Their links are soon to expire by this point, which is definitely making it harder for them to tank the same amount that they could have before.
I mean, here it kind of shows like control comps can definitely be useful, but Sedition just basically brought the exact same comp, but removed the control section of it beyond their Maulers and brought in damage and tank, and just showed that sometimes you just need a blunt object to beat down your opponents with.
Definitely.
And nothing is blunter than the Abaddon. It is literally shaped like a brick. A very weirdly shaped brick, but a brick nonetheless.
For sure.
Also,
Getting its damage onto the Vedmak here. Lost Touch is about to fall down now too. Trying his best to make at least some impact on grid here, but struggling.
The interesting part is he's trying to like orbit around the Abaddon for a second there, right? And the Abaddon
Yes,
doesn't
it does
have a
appear.
grapple.
Ooh.
So he could have theoretically got under their guns for a bit. But unfortunately, it's not just the Abaddon. It's also the Harp Navy shooting him as well as the other
Yep.
Vedmak. So
And Harb
if it was
Navy's
just-
skillfully keeping distance there to make sure that he's unable to get under the guns. So Vedmak falls there, and I think at this point it's basically fate sealed.
Yep. If it was just the Vedmak versus the Abaddon, actually would have a chance of killing it because again he can get under its guns. But there's too much support back in this team up. The Scorpion pick went from an interesting pick to a death knell here. Nothing they can do except get pulled apart.
For sure. I mean, with all things jams, you take a little bit more risk inherently because it's a chance that you jam them. Very rarely is it guaranteed jams. So that element of randomness there means that certain games, everything can go your way and their logi seems to be perma-jammed. Other times, the jams are just not hitting, and with that, Scorp has turned into a big ball of fire now.
Yeah, good fights in local as well. They understand what's happened to you.
Yep. Harbis.
Dying.
His HP's bar flying away at the speed of light. And there falls the game. Sedition taking it home, and with that, we pass it over to the desk for a break, I believe.
Wi-Fi. Scram and hope I don't get scrammed.
Holy goddamn stuff!
Drifter has me scrammed too. We need to clear.
Play it out, God.
Yeah, I'm logging off. This is fun game.
Dopamine. Oh my God!
Welcome back from that match. I am currently feeling jammed because it seems like jams might not have worked out from them to the other team, but it seemed to have worked out on my brain. With that being said, though, we're going to quickly talk about that match and then probably go to a break. But to talk about that match, Misty, you mentioned the Scorpion being a solo jam ship, and it didn't seem to work with. Earlier, it was working maybe with a Kitsune paired with it. What's your thoughts on that?
So I think the Scorpion as a solo jam ship can work in something like the Alliance tournament, where you have access to logistics vessels like the Guardian or the Zarm, as they are both very good at outputting reps. The Zarm especially, if you just cycle it on the Scorpion, the rep will get stronger. Those ships aren't allowed in this particular tournament, and that means that the Scorpion just isn't going to be very tanky at all, right? The Augurer or the Executor will fall apart if you sniff at them, so the Scorpion will essentially be left alone. And ECM acts more as a taunt than it does like a prevention, something that prevents you locking, like it did in the old days. So everything can lock the Scorpion if it jams, if it's jams land, which means that it can be shot. So you need the ships behind it to keep it alive. The Kitsune performs that role in a way by allowing you to take damage off of the Scorpion by jamming the targets that are shooting the Scorpion, so that it can stay alive a lot longer and catch reps more easily. Working by itself in this tournament setup probably doesn't seem like something that can work, so I'm surprised to see it brought, and I'm not surprised to see it die.
And it's interesting to see the Scorpion did die a little later in that match, but it did not seem like it was working out for them in their favor here. Deebs, let's talk about maybe some tackling and some things that we saw in that match that might have helped prevent the team at the team with the projection from actually dying.
Yeah, so we saw there that we had two ships, the Vedmak and the Hard Navy, just chasing that exec around, trying to put damage on it. It looked like what was happening was, very cleverly, the damp ship was throwing damps on one, then on the other, and particularly breaking up the ramp from that Vedmak, allowing it to do a little bit of damage, and then damped, and now it can't target anymore, and it can't do it. And because that was a battle cruiser and a fairly quick but not the quickest cruiser trying to chase that exec around, they simply couldn't catch it. Even if they had tackle, not sure if they did, but it's not inconceivable that the Vedmak had a scram on there. They were never in range to be able to grab it. The only ship on their team that could have potentially grabbed it was the Magus, and the enemy team was able to get that Magus, kill it, and prevent their exec from ever being caught. It did go down eventually, but without that tackle, without the ability to sit on top of it, especially with the damps taking their damage off of it, that was an incredibly effective use of all the resources on the team to keep that exec alive. And even with two ships chasing it, even with the Scorpion throwing jams everywhere, they were able to just keep that exec alive longer and longer and longer, allowing them the time to take out all the other ships on that team, and then eventually the Vedmak and the Hard Navy themselves. But you'll note too that because they had that control, because those damps were being applied to them, because they couldn't catch the exec to fully apply their DPS, they kind of ignored them otherwise. They used that control to allow them to focus their damage elsewhere and break down the low end, kill the enemy exec, while they're just kept flying away and winning.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Vedmak is a very powerful ship, but just like its Leshek counterpart we see sometimes in the AT, it can be kind of easy to control, and sometimes requires tackle on a ship to really start utilizing that spool, ramping up, and really actually doing damage. Great ship, a lot of utility, great tracking, good damage, but can easily be disrupted, as we saw there. Good use of that Mollis, and it really actually out E-ward the E-ward team. With that, though, there are some tiebreakers coming up in the near future, but we got to get those sorted out. So we're going to take a small break here and then come back and run those few tiebreakers to see who actually makes it through the feeders and who does not. So with that, we are sending it to a break and we'll be back shortly. Welcome back for our tiebreakers. All right, just to make everyone aware, the reason these tiebreakers are in place is because we'd like to offer the teams to not just go 1-1 and be eliminated due to certain things. So we are doing it to ensure that everyone takes 2 losses to be eliminated from the tournament, just to broaden the way you get kicked out. But with that said, our first tiebreaker match is going to be between Standard Protocol and former Dove residents. And with that, the bans are in, with the Standard Protocol team banning the Carius, Malleus, and Celestus, and the former Dove residents banning the Carius, Phobos, and Devoter. Duzak, what do you think of these bans?
I think that the Phobos and Devoter are just a value ban, and I'm not sure that they're that valuable in that slot. There definitely are other ships that are worth taking there. I think it's something that you would consider if you are trying to kite a little bit, or at least have the mobility and not deal with the long range scram, and then you're going to get Ashimu webbed. And the full damp ban, that makes more sense. I think that if you absolutely don't want to face damps, that will work out for you. Although you're probably going to get to go up against tracking disruption instead.
Yeah, and Rose, with these damp
Yes.
bans, what could you expect to see from these teams?
Honestly, we might see some more tracking disruption. Maybe we're going to see more jammers, but with more definitely damps. They have chosen to full send and aim towards one type of E-War. So we're gonna have to see probably some really solid Logi. I'm predicting we're gonna see a lot of Logi drones. They've been really popular in the tournament so far. And we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we're about to send it over to the arena. Duzak, do you see anything that you think we might see? Like,
I was gonna add what Misty had been saying all day yesterday, which is if you get rid of all damps, you're gonna have a good time with jams. So let's see if we get any control comps with that.
Yeah, the jam caps have been doing kind of interesting today, on and off. It's kind of been an execution thing more than a comp thing. So we'll see if these teams trust in their execution and bring some jams or not. With the hit points, though, I'm interested to see if we're going to see any rushes or not. Rushes not doing fairly well, but you never know. It's the tiebreakers. You've played this team before. Maybe you see something new. With that said, Duzak, with this being a case of them all playing each other now at this point once, do mind games start to come in, or do you think that they should just maybe bring their best comp to make sure they just get through?
I think you bring your best comp unless what you brought last time was your best comp, so to speak. There are a lot of mind games. I personally feel like the mind games are always in the back of my head when I'm picking things, but we also do a decent amount of opposition research, and if you've flown against somebody, you have both opposition research and first-hand experience to base yourself on. So I think that you want to mix it up a little bit, especially if you're coming off a loss against that particular team.
Alrighty, and with all that said, teams are now landing on grid for the tiebreaker match. Winner gets to move on through the feeders, and loser goes home. And with that all being said, we are going to send it now to the arena for this tiebreaker match.
Thank you. Welcome down to the arena today. We got a wonderful lineup of opponents. I'm here with I am Kevin Drummond, and I am here with
Grable. Hello. We see a shield versus armor comp again. This time with probably very brawly Hyperion in the middle, warping at 0. And the countdown is ticking down, and we're gonna see how they're gonna play it out.
Absolutely. He's starting out the match, though. All of those blaster ships running right in going straight, trying to push past the Ana. Hey, so it looks like that Hyperion has been tackled. It is not able to push in as much as it wants.
Indeed, and the Mango's going also quite deep into the team of former Ralph residents here.
Absolutely, and it looks like that those will be the first target trying to go down here, trying to stop it from being able to use those extremely powerful pods, but it's catching some solid reps here.
But the Tholos goes down.
Absolutely, and the Brutix Navy is bleeding down as well. The Exec is not being able to keep it up through the DPS, but that once that Tholos pod runs out, it's going to be much easier to hold it up. That Tholos did not get long on grid, so it probably didn't get to get more than that single pod off on the Brutix Navy, and that means that the composition's rush power has been severely depleted, even as the crew starts to dip now.
Indeed, also the Brutix Navy issue is reaching low armor here. And if that goes down, that's quite some damage. That's off the grid then. So
Absolutely.
I think there's still everything open here. That Tholos was certainly a hit for former residents, but trading it for a Brutix Navy is not bad, I would say.
Certainly an interesting trade as the Brutix Navy finally goes down, but it looks like there's not much that's actually dropping on the other side. The Osprey is starting to get caught up by drones, but there's nothing tackling it yet.
Not yet, but the crew is moving towards Podrick's Osprey here. And all those drones that are currently swarming over to it, they might start to hurt much more once the crew has webs on this Osprey.
Yep, that tackle's going to help all of that DPS apply, but that Hyperion isn't over yet. The Arbitrator's starting to get into range, but the Exec is starting to drop pretty quickly as well.
Indeed, we're gonna see the classic Logi trade here. And now it's a DPS race again, but looks currently like Standard Protocol is a little bit ahead here.
Absolutely, the Osprey going down a little bit quicker. We'll see how quick it does end up. It seems to be holding just a little bit. It might be running out of charges soon.
Yeah, meanwhile, everything else but the Logi frigates here is at relatively good health. The Maelstrom now working on the exec.
Yeah, it looks like the crew has let the Osprey go. We'll see if it'll still drop here with such little tackle on it. And it looks like it might be a dead even Logi trade there.
Yeah, the Magus trying to fix that tackle issue there and chasing after the Osprey.
Yep, Osprey's getting pretty close to the edge now. Almost at the boundary, but I don't know which it'll find first. Oh, looks like Red Team will find it first.
Yeah, but Magus have to pay attention now. He's at 120 kilometers, but he's turning, so that would have been an issue if he overshot there.
Yep, and with the Osprey down, it looks like the Hyperion has reloaded close range ammo and is smashing that Onyx.
So former Delph residents is a little bit ahead here since they have killed the Brutix Navy issue earlier. They still have their Cyclone fleet issue up, so they are ahead on points at the moment. But the Onyx taking heavy hits here.
Trying to cycle, trying to bring down that crewer first. The crewer doesn't contribute a ton of DPS, but it is points, and that will put them a little bit further ahead as well.
Yeah, the Jaguar just slowing it down a little bit, but the crewer, yeah, he will go down to the drones soon, and there he pops.
And the Onyx struggles to keep up with the DPS as he's cycling charges as hard as he can.
Yeah, his auxiliary shield booster will run out eventually, and then it's the end for him. Meanwhile, former Ralph Dissidents, what a name, are working on the Hyperion of Levon Beros, and he's in half armor now.
Yep, a little bit deceptive because the Hyperion has a very good rep bonus, but with the rules of the tournament, only one repairer, it can't take nearly as much as you might see in normal play on Tranquility Hyperion tank. But it is still going down. The Mag has taken some damage as well.
Indeed, yeah, the Magus being a great target now with the Logi dead for the drones of the blue team here. And since there's just no reps there, he will just be chipped down and die eventually.
Yep, looks like Standard Protocol's gunning for that CFI, but it doesn't look like it's going nearly fast enough.
Yeah, it's also having still some speed up. It's going at like, well, 90 ms is not that fast, but still it's a little bit, which helps keeping your distance from this Hyperion, which is now reaching our hull.
Yeah, as a Galanti ship, it's got a little bit of hull, but without armor charges left, it's not going to be holding for very long.
Yeah,
It doesn't look.
Speaking
Sorry.
about hull, we haven't seen someone hull taking yet. There are no limitations of fitting bulkheads, but well, that also it's a bit of issue with your cargo hold. Then maybe you'll see that in another match. I don't think this one was a hull tank.
Unfortunately not. But yeah, all that's left is the Arbitrator, and Arbitrator runs off of drone DPS, and with one cruiser, I don't think that they'll be able to even break the CFI quick enough, let alone chewing into that Maelstrom. Maelstroms aren't thin either.
Yeah, the Arbitrator was a very interesting choice here in this matchup, I feel. Compared to other cruisers they could have brought, this is a strong Evor option, but not a strong damage option. So I don't think this Arbitrator can do anything here anymore.
And with that Jag on it, it's not even going to be able to make a run for the boundary. So a very unfortunate showing.
Yeah, front is about to go down here to the autocannons of the Maelstrom and the missiles of the Cyclone.
Absolutely. I'm surprised at how much damage that Maelstrom did in comparison to the Hyperion. I would think that it would put out quite as much. Maybe I should go back and check it out.
And there pops the Arbitrator, and with that, we're gonna head back to the desk.
Loved one been scammed in local? Has someone promised to double your risk? Have you been hit by a hypernet scheme? If you answered yes to any of these questions, it's time to set safety to red and fire back. Hi, I'm Lemmy W. Isk of Isk, Shogatsu, and Carbon Attorneys, Jita 44's premier litigation law firm. The time for being a victim? It's over. We will ensure that you get the restitution you deserve, and those who wronged you are punished. Don't choose some pencil-pushing, paralegal F1 monkey. Choose a legal FC who will jump through gates for you. Choose quality. Choose ISK.
Welcome back from that exciting match, where Standard Protocol sadly does fall down to the team now known as former feeder residents as they move on to the main tournament without feeding too hard. Dujak, an interesting decision, banning the Phobos and Devoter and then bringing in Onyx. Could you tell me maybe why they brought that and how it changed the match?
The Onyx has a long-range scram, which is good to dictate the range, especially if you are like more or less rushing like they were. You want to keep something in your range, catch it quickly, and stick it there. And if you are up against something like a blaster Hyperion, it also lets you keep it at arm's length, because Hyperions do the best damage at very close ranges, like about 5 kilometers, whereas missiles and autocannons do their damage somewhat further away. The Onyx is also an amazing value pick. It does like north of 600 DPS and has tank bonus. Like the Hicks are absolute monsters in such a small 66 format, and they would give hacks a run for their money for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting also that the pick of the Onyx matched up perfectly with the resist profile of the Hyperion and Brutix's guns, which also hurt that team. Rose, it was also interesting that the other rush-looking comp burned away off the gate. Why might that be?
You're muted.
There we go. I love when my cat hits buttons. So missiles and autos. So missiles do have a limited range. You can finagle them to a cloud of sorts, to get a little bit more firepower with them. Example, MWD towards the opponent, use them. But if you're using lasers, you gotta, for the most part, you gotta be pretty close. You can have a little bit of distance, but missiles and autos, they are going to shred lasers, letting former feeder residents move on to current next round residents.
And Dujek, you had one quick point you had on the Maelstrom pick. What's that all about?
It's really the Goon signature ship. I predicted that for them in the last round that I was on the desk before they showed up. They didn't bring it that time, but it's good to see that they've finally gotten some mileage out of practicing it for every tournament, whether or not it's good.
All right. So we have one more match today, and it is this tiebreaker match between Bright Side of Death and SPDR. And the bans come in, and there are some interesting bans. A Roke ban, a Crucifier Sentinel ban, and SPDR banning the Typhoon Carriers and Roke as well. A ship that we have not seen that much. Dujek, why might this ship get banned if we're not seeing it a ton?
The Roke in particular, because we practiced against them, and I got to fly the Roke against them a couple of times earlier today. I was inspired yesterday. I kind of like those projection comps if something very grindy and heavy armor isn't on the table, and it's a great ship in this format, as we've seen. We won with it earlier today, and it got some wins yesterday as well. Like the 700 DPS out to 80 kilometers is it's so accurate as well. You put some target painters in that comp, it's great.
Yeah, we're also seeing more TD bans than damp bans. Rose, why do you think the TD bans are a little bit more of a better choice than the damp bans, or why might you choose TDs over damps here?
TDs, if you're not wanting to be hit, it's going to help with tracking. Damps, I mean, honestly, I could see both being used. You see they've got the carries, the Crucifier, and the Sentinel. So they still have a lot of range of E-War available to them. It will be curious if they decide to go with like the Celestis or any of the other options that are open to them. But yeah, let's see how the groups go.
Yeah, and that being said, they have landed on grid officially for our last match of the day. So we will send it over to the arena to see who makes it through those feeders and who does not.
All right, welcome back into the fray here. It's a very similar comp here, with the only real difference being the Evo frigate again. Bisot coming in with the Abaddon and as their main battleship, and Sapir Dome Review coming in with a Tempest instead.
Indeed, we'll see the difference between those autocannons and lasers. Lasers generally have a fair bit of extra range, but autocannons have better tracking and better peak DPS in the close range. So we'll see if the SPDR will be able to leverage that to their advantage, or if that massive brick of an Abaddon will be holding all the damage all day long.
Yeah, the warpins might favor Bright Side of Death here a little bit on the red side, since both teams warped in at range. So they can theoretically start a little bit to kite and use the range advantage of their guns.
Absolutely, and with that Mollisong grid, it'll be even stronger that they can keep that range and turn off some of the enemy guns, and we'll see how that goes for them here.
And
as they immediately start backing.
Yeah, and the match is on the way. Drones are getting dropped. Interesting here. Sub Peer Review is using a lot of armor reps, going out to the exec. lot of armor drones on the Logi.
Yep, the cloud descending on the exec, trying to hold it up under all this DPS, that long range DPS that it's going to be difficult for it to get away from, really.
Yeah, meanwhile, the Mollos of Grey Shadows is being primary target for Sub-P and Dom Review.
Yep,
but he's stabilizing now.
Yep. Both I might need to get in and try to get some webs into the situation to get hit that Tempest in range here, but the Highness hanging back for now.
Yeah, you can see Bizot basically chilling there at their position and just very casually slowboating in. Currently using their range advantage a bit.
Yep, the Magus is actually taking some solid hits. It's still holding for now, but taking some surprising hits, I think.
Yeah, interesting positioning match going on here. We see Bizot now slowly going in. Meanwhile, Sub-Peer Review, Sub-Peer Dom Review, I forget Dom, moving downwards a little bit. I'm not sure if that's a good plan because they kind of leave the backline open by that.
As the they're trying to pivot around, but that Abaddon might be able to cut off their backline from the front and here, or as they close the range.
Yeah, we see some nice positioning here from Bizot. They keep their battleship cruiser and battle cruiser very close to each other. The Phobos being kind of a screen or a threat, basically a threat for the Abaddon.
As Bizot has switched onto the Prophecy Navy, and has taken some pretty solid chunks out of it.
Indeed, yeah. You wouldn't expect Prophecy Navy taking that much damage that quick.
Yep, that exec is pulling in closer, trying to get some reps on him, trying to hold him up here. But it looks like they're still pushing through the Prophecy Navy, and now moving on to the exec.
Yeah, that's a great call to like primary one of the bigger ships you can apply well to, and then when the Logi comes in to save it, switch to it and kill the Logi instead. Something we've seen quite a bit in this tournament.
Yep, that exec is caught and gone. And with that gone, it's going to be so much easier to grind through the rest of that Prophecy Navy.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the Phobos of Groot is doing there. Basically at the back, very much at the back, and
you gotta get up in there. Gotta get up in the front, try to protect that exec, keep it from dying to their Phobos.
Yeah, we would have thought that they used the Phobos to screen a bit more, but didn't happen.
Yep, and it looks like they might try for a Logi trade, but they're getting off way worse as the Prophecy Navy is starting to dip. If they trade an exec and a PNI for just one exec, that's not a good trade at all. It might be all they can get though at this point. They might not even get the exec as it pulls range very well, untackled still.
Yeah, the Tempest is still chasing that Executor, but it's not that fast. But we see the Hyena now going in, coming after the exec.
Looks like the Magus might screen it off though here. Nope, the Magus doesn't look like he can.
He didn't get him. It's also pretty tricky to do.
Yeah, not
fast
an easy
as the
task.
Hyena is, yeah, and now the Hyena has caught up to the exec of Bizot, but I think that might be too late as Sub-Peer Review also lost their prophecy.
Yep, without that PNI's damage, it's going to be really hard to kill this exec, even with the Hyena webs on it. And it looks like Hyena is trying to pull off to live as well. Oh, but without any reps, it's hard for that to do anything really. And with the Phobos down now, there's very little DPS left.
Yeah, I would call that Magus now if I was the Bizot Logi to screen that Tempest, but currently at the moment it's just
that Magus might
free
be
to roam.
TP fit. I don't think that Magus has anything to screen off the Tempest with.
That might be as well, yeah, true.
If it doesn't have any tackle, not much you can do.
It has a target painted, but it got tackled now. The Tempest is actually switched to the Magus.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's definitely a choice. If you can catch the Logi, then at least kill the Magus. That's at least something you can shoot.
Something you can shoot, I think, is the best thing you can go for at this point. Because with that Phobos on him, he's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, the Phobos and Abaddon were basically busy all the time, shooting all everything else but the Tempest of Sub-European Dome Review there, and now they're coming back and finishing off the Tempest basically.
And I'm surprised at how this Tempest was left up for so long. I guess it wasn't doing much damage, so it wasn't that high of a priority. But Tempests aren't all that tanky.
Yeah, I think Bisot just did a very good job, especially Sinoria in the Executor. They are kiting the Tempest, and Sub-European Review just didn't go in decisively enough, I would say.
They kept trying to get something more when they couldn't kill what they had to begin with.
Yeah, but maybe the Magus goes down. Oh, no, he's catching reps. Might have been a clean sweep otherwise. But he's not going down for the battle report, so...
Absolutely. Exec has swung back in, hit those reps on. And I think that SPDR, or that exec swing way too close and got tackled. It probably could have stayed a little bit further range and maybe been able to hang on in the fight for a little longer anyways. But
yeah, biggest threat to Bisot at this point was the boundary, but they were still 25 kilometers away from that. So a very decisive victory here for Bisot, and something we can have a look at closer at the desk.
Stop being casual. They're really bad. We should not lose anybody to this. Warp off. Warp off. Take the fleet warp. Everybody warp off. This is really, really bad execution. I'm very disappointed.
Crash our enemies. Your dams are completely damped out.
Crash. I'm damped out. I'm damped out.
Get on that campus, boys.
Eat your reps.
Yeah.
Everything damped. I've not been able to look at single thing all game.
I'm jammed.
And that concludes our feeder rounds today. And with that said, there was a few things we're going to go over in that match. One being, Rose, it seemed as they shot a prophecy to force an exec in. Do you think that's a good call from them, and how did it play out in that match?
I mean, honestly, this tournament so far, we have seen the bait Navy prophecies. We've seen them very strongly. And if they, I hate to say it, maybe if they were paying attention, since it was a mirror comp, maybe if, shouldn't have gone for it. But it was a choice. They lost their exec for it, and honestly, that could have led them to losing the match. But yeah, with it being very common so far, just in the feeders, I really think that maybe they should have watched some VODs and realized, hey, maybe this wasn't the smartest choice.
Dujak, was there anything that you saw in that match that maybe, should be highlighted or talked about before we wrap the stream up?
I think that there's a lot of range control that you get from having a Mollis and an Abaddon instead of an autocannon ship with a Hyena. Like, they're operating at different lengths, and at that point you've got the Tempest, which is it's a choice that I don't necessarily agree with. Like, you gotta leverage the newts on that thing to get anything out of it. I think that I'd prefer being on the Abaddon side of that, and it's hard to fly a Tech 1 Logi when you're being damped the entire time, and you gotta go in, rep, and get out without dying, and eventually, as we saw, it did die, and it cost them the match.
Do you think that if maybe they leveraged those newts on that the Tempest and got in a little bit more, we might have seen a different match? It seemed like the Tempest was far away for quite a bit.
I mean, no, I don't think it would have helped in this case. I just think that, like, the Baden is such a better ship than the Tempest in terms of raw stats. If the Baden and the Tempest are dueling and grappling each other at short ranges and just unloading onto each other, the fact that the Tempest will eventually cause the Phobos some cap distress isn't enough. There's more the kind of thing that you could do if you had an Armageddon, or if you had like a significant amount of newts in the rest of the comp, like if you were running Tempest together with Newt Ashamu and Newt Sunamur maybe and stuff like that, where you're hedging on them having cap using guns and deciding to like shut off a significant amount of their DPS and repping through the rest. And in any way, shape, or form, you are not neuting out an Abaddon quickly enough to shut it down in that situation, and you're going to lose out.
Yep, seems like you just need to pick the ship that works better, the overpowered Abaddon, or use your Tempest a little bit better in a better matchup or setting. But with all that said, that will be concluding the feeders. I'd like to give a shout out to everyone who is here today with us. We had Lemon Eater, Wingnut, Mystical Might, Rose, Graybill, Dujek, Kevin, and Deebs, as well as everyone else in the background putting on all the work that they have done. And also, the 29th of March will be the next set of matches, the actual tournament. That'll be held on the CCP stream. So make sure you go over there and gamble away all of your channel points and give them all to me, as I bet on the correct teams every single time, guaranteed. And with that said, though, thank you for attending our stream today, and we will see you shortly.